Okay, let's see. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this special, what's the official title? Special Outdoor Dining Study Session. It's an adjourned regular meeting, but it's a study session. With a topic like this, it's helpful to have only this on the agenda and set up in this way so that we can really study it, as the name implies. So welcome. I've called it to order, and we are going to do a pledge to the flag. And if I could have Maureen, if you could, sorry. Welcome back. I know, you'll never come. If you could just, from your seat, lead us in the pledge. In Spanish? No, in English.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have a city pin?
I don't have a city pin.
Oh.
All right.
Oh my God, I just got
Thank you.
Thank you.
You deserve it.
Treasure.
Okay.
For once we give her a key off.
Okie dokie. That's shocking to me that you don't. Okay, if we can do a roll call.
Councilmember Franklin?
Here.
Councilmember Tarnay?
Here.
Councilmember Sherillian?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lesser?
Here.
Mayor Haworth?
Here. Okay. And now I need an approval of the agenda. So it has been moved approval by Councilmember Franklin and seconded by Councilmember Tarnay. Call for the question.
I'm going to do roll call.
Oh, roll call, because we should announce, Mr. City Attorney, do you want to make the announcement, or do you want me to?
How about Steve?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, as noted on the agenda, Councilmember Sherillian is attending the conference, the City Council while he's in Washington, D.C. at a League of California Cities. And it's been properly noticed, and so he can participate.
It's the National League of Cities, correct?
Yes.
National League. Okay, so noticed, he can participate. Hi, Steve. Patience with us if we, I forget you're there. All right, thank you. Not that, I mean, you know what I'm saying. All right, please, yeah.
Councilmember Tarnay?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Mayor Haworth?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Lesser?
Yes.
Councilmember Sherillian?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we're going to have public comments. So the time limit is 3 minutes per person. If you could come down and speak. And if you're planning on speaking, please line up to speak, or please be ready to speak. Oh, no public comment? No, kidding. Honestly, so we can do it a couple different ways. You could have, let me explain this. There's, obviously, it's a study session on one topic. There will be different presentations by different staff members and different things. We will have public comments during or after, or, those different presentations. So if you want to speak at a certain point, yes, you could. Thank you for, Carol. I could see a lot of machinations going on there. Thank you. But you could speak now, but if you speak now, you cannot speak again on the same issue. So if anyone, public comments? All right. How about no more public comments in chambers? How about online?
No request on Zoom.
Okay. So to my colleagues, that's how we're going to do it with the public comments. And help me remember so I don't just speed along. And with that, hello, Interim Director Heiss.
Hello. Thank you. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to have a dedicated meeting tonight to talk about the outdoor dining consideration of the long-term outdoor dining program and preferred vision. But before we get into that,
Right.
I did want to thank all the task force members. This has been going on since Council directed us July 5th of 2022. And since then, the task force has had 15 meetings, and many of the task force members, or some of them, are here today. So just want to make sure we appreciate all those that are here, that were part of that task force. There is an attachment online that has all the names of those members. Also, the staff you see behind me here today to answer questions, we're also part of those task force meetings and involved with the behind-the-scenes work. So I wanted to thank all the staff, and especially Jae-hee Yoon, senior planner, who will be doing the presentation tonight. So thank you.
Can I interrupt and say, if you are a task force member and you're sitting here in the audience, if you could raise your hand so we can thank you. Thank you very much for all your time. Great, thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. I'm Senior Planner Jae-hee Yoon, and the item before you is a status update on the long-term outdoor program development. The contents of the presentation will provide you with a brief background.
Can you just wait till
Yes.
until we get caught up with you? There's a lot in here. Okay, I'm set. Thank you.
Thank you. The contents of the presentation will provide you with a brief background, including the purpose and objective of the program development, which led to the preferred program vision, consisting of sidewalk widening, parking reconfiguration, and public flex space improvements. Then we'll transition into the operational side of things with the task force recommendations, followed by potential code amendments that may be initiated at this time. Due to the amount of information presented tonight, there will be several Q&A slides in between different topics, so you may ask questions as we go. By way of background, the city's temporary outdoor dining program began in June 2020 in response to COVID-19 restrictions on indoor operations. And by August 2021, the City Council directed staff to pursue a work plan item to study a long-term solution as the focus gradually shifted to what could be in a post-pandemic era. In February of 2023, the temporary outdoor dining program came to an end, and shortly after, in May, the task force meetings kicked off with 15 conducted to date. In June, the city contracted with MIG to assist us in specialized areas of the program development. And in September, the City Council received the first status update report regarding the program scope and local coastal program amendment options. In October, the first community workshop was held, where the same materials were made available at the hometown fair during the same week. And in November, targeted outreach was conducted to Walk Street residents along select Walk Street commercial corners, where we wanted to potentially utilize that for outdoor dining opportunities. In December, the consultant team started stakeholder interviews with the residential and business community that continued through April 2024. In February 2024, the second status update was presented that introduced the preferred program vision. And in April, the third status update report included the rough order of magnitude estimate on how much it would cost to implement the project. In July, staff conducted targeted outreach to businesses that are identified in the conceptual plans to inform them of the program development and also understand if there's a willingness to contribute to the potential costs of the build-out. In October, the fourth status update report was presented that included the pilot project to partially implement the preferred program vision, which didn't move forward at the time. And in January of this year, the second workshop was conducted. The purpose of the program development is to provide a long-term solution to bring it back in a way that ensures fiscal, environmental, parking, and other impacts are accounted for, as we came to realize that the benefits didn't only benefit the restaurants, but also our culture as well. And from the very beginning, the objective of the program development was to preserve residents' quality of life and also provide adequate outdoor dining opportunities that would work best for our city. Numerous community outreach efforts have been conducted throughout the process to engage the public, and we've repeatedly heard from the community that our existing sidewalks are narrow and congested, that on-street decks cause numerous issues, including vermin, visual blight, access and visibility issues for drivers. Also, how the diverted drainage flow caused flooding in some areas, and especially with the on-street parking spaces that were eliminated to accommodate on-street decks and the increased occupancy, people felt that the parking and traffic impacts got worse, including an increase in trash and noise. In the earlier days of the task force meetings, we reviewed case studies and also relevant policy documents to see what we wanted to pursue in the future. And some of the suggestions that came out of those meetings are wider sidewalks, placing diners closer to the business and pedestrians closer to the street, making improvements to the landscaping throughout the city, and also allowing public flex spaces and seating opportunities for the public in the right-of-way. So taking all that into consideration and interdepartmental discussions that tapped into everyone's expertise, we came to realize that the best possible solution would be to permanently widen sidewalks, which is at the core of the preferred program vision, along with the parking reconfiguration and public flex space improvements. There are three main components of the preferred program vision, the first being sidewalk widening. As you can see on the left side images, the sidewalks will be widened into the vehicular right-of-way, where all outdoor dining activities will be in the form of sidewalk dining immediately adjacent to the restaurant, delineated by railings, and a clear path of travel for pedestrians will be provided outside of that area. On the right side image, these are sidewalk dining typologies that represent what the future of outdoor dining may look like, depending on whether the area is sloped or flat. These are maps of downtown and North Manhattan Beach that highlight where sidewalk widening is proposed by 4 to 9 feet into the vehicular right-of-way along Manhattan Beach Boulevard, Manhattan Avenue, and Highland Avenue. We'll stop here for any questions you may have regarding sidewalk widening.
Madam Mayor, if I may
Yes,
just add to
please.
Jahi's presentation, that as a part of the background, it's important to note that staff collaborated with the California Coastal Commission, as given that this project is in the coastal zone, we did have to incorporate their comments into the development of a vision. Otherwise, we would end up in a position where we would potentially not have their support at the end of the day. And so some of the developments that you're seeing in front of you did result from the discussions with the Coastal Commission, and that includes the inclusion of the public flex spaces.
So they said, hey, you should do this. We like these.
Yes,
Okay.
because if you're taking away parking spaces, the replacement doesn't necessarily have to be a 1-to-1 ratio, but it does have to be balanced out with improvements to the public, just to the public forum in general. And so public flex space improvements do qualify for that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so you're saying if we have questions so far, so let me change my screen here. And just do any of my council colleagues have questions? Councilmember Franklin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you to all the task force members that are here and also that may be watching and did work on this project. It was a very large project, a lot of detail. Those of us who lived through it while we were on council appreciate, and we all do here on council, appreciate it, the level of detail and the different cohorts of residents and businesses and the like, and the balancing. So just really wanted to express that. It's the true reason why we have task forces, because the volume of the work and then the level of the detail that we've seen cannot be produced by council alone. So thank you again. The one thing I'd like to see in this, we don't have to do it tonight, but it's just this all happened under the auspices of COVID and the shutdown, and so the time and the governor's emergency orders. So I would just like to sort of see that tab, like when did the shutdown start? When could we first emerge from the shutdown? How did the governor's orders and the health department orders, overlay with this, especially in the early years. Yeah, I guess the early years, the early,
Do you want those answered now?
only to the, I mean, I kind of know, but I think it should be good as a refresher to sort of put us in the mind of what it was like.
We have that.
Because being on council at that time,
Yes.
the circumstances were pretty intense, so.
So I am aware that from previous staff reports related to the temporary outdoor dining, going back to as early as sometime in 2021 or 2022, the staff reports had attachments on the chronology of the executive orders and the changes that took place in the city. So we'd be able to provide that information to you.
Well, and it says here on page 7 of 254 that between June 2020 and February 2023, the city allowed for temporary outdoor dining. So it's not the executive orders and how they all came into play. But, and then I guess when, on August 24th, 2021, council directed staff to pursue a work plan item to study a long-term program for a post-pandemic.
Yes.
But it was June 2020 through February 23.
Okay, but do we remember when the first decks went up? And what were the criteria for that? And I see Eric warming up the mic.
Look at that.
We do have our microphones in place. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Eric Zamvliet, the City Traffic Engineer. COVID was declared as an emergency on March 13th, actually 3 days from now, 5 years ago, in 2020. The city authorized an outdoor dining deck program on June 10th. So very quickly, we went into action for that. First decks were going up in July of 2020. Those decks stayed up until 2023.
Yeah.
Right.
February of 2023. So the businesses had a couple of years of that. The city council ordered that taken down in 2023, but left up the ability for us to have sidewalk dining and an expanded sidewalk dining service where we did not require the replacement of indoor seats with outdoor seats. And some of restaurants are still taking advantage of the outdoor
Yep.
sidewalk dining service.
Okay, good.
Is that helpful?
Oh, yeah, very, yeah. And was the adoption of the outdoor dining decks at that time during the, I'm calling it the emergency? Just give us an idea how that went. Did everybody rush in? Was it a certain number at a time? You kind of remember?
If I could characterize it, most of the major restaurants did not have the ability to seat many people inside at the time. And so the only reason or the only way to have the restaurants active was either to take takeout service or have outdoor dining. It was space limited at that time because we had social distancing. And so then eventually those dining decks were allowed to have more and more people on them. We had tried several different ways to manage that with regard to the number of seats per restaurant, the number of square foot of outdoor decks per restaurant. We even closed down Manhattan Avenue for a few weeks.
Right, yeah.
At the peak of the pandemic as well.
That's this patch of gray hair.
That's right. And right here on mine.
Yeah.
As the pandemic wound down, a lot of the restaurants did not want to keep the charges going for our monthly rates, as well as the rental of some of that equipment that they had out on the dining decks. And so slowly they went down. Some of them were taken down before the city council declared the closure of the street decks.
Okay. And I saw in here, there was, it said 57 spaces were taken, but I thought the number was higher. I thought it was more.
At its peak, it was, you have to also consider the north end. The north end businesses also
Oh,
had
yeah.
parking spaces that were taken up. At its peak, it was about 62
62.
parking spaces.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Other questions from my colleagues on this, on right now, we're talking about sidewalk widening?
Yes.
Or,
Yes,
yes?
yes, yes. But everything is in continuation with the other
Everything is in
topics.
continuation, yeah.
I-
Go ahead,
I
yeah.
was going to save my questions until you had an opportunity to explain what the preferred program vision is, but perhaps just for context, how did staff arrive at, in conjunction with our task force as well as our consultant, at where the extensions of the sidewalks are currently placed? How did that configuration evolve? What were the factors that went into placing the proposed extensions of the sidewalk for sidewalk dining where they are in this current plan?
First of all, we looked at the existing street width to see areas that are underutilized, where we wouldn't have to take out existing street lanes to accommodate wider sidewalks. Also, it primarily focused on the existing eating and drinking establishments that either took part in the temporary outdoor program or had an interest in participating in the future. And then we took the other considerations from the downtown specific plan and all the other case studies that we studied to see where it would fit best within our scope. And because the conceptual plans were developed in-house by Eric Zamboli, he can add a little more to the context as well.
Okay. Do you want to wait till you have an opportunity to explain what we have in front of us? Because I do have questions about that. I can defer those until later.
Okay. One question I had was with regards to the sidewalk widening. And I am absolutely not saying this is my idea, but I want to understand the legality of what if council says, well, we only want to do widening on streets that are flat. We don't want to deal with Manhattan Beach Boulevard and the slope. Would that, and maybe I need to turn, maybe it's to our city attorney, maybe you know, is that legal, or is that an unfair, some sort of unfair business advantage to the folks that are on the slope? I mean, I've always heard people say that, like, oh, that's why you have the pads out there. But on the other hand, could we consider that of like just using Manhattan Avenue with extended sidewalks for that program? So I know you don't have an official opinion because but.
Well, it's not, the concern would not be that some businesses get it and some don't. There's no legal problem with that. It's really like ADU and other considerations.
It's not like, because there would be some restaurants that could have it. Like, that was always one of the issues I heard in the beginning is that, well, this restaurant has so much frontage, they get more than this restaurant that doesn't. But we could still look at sidewalk widening in a more limited area.
Yes.
And not have to worry about being biased against a certain group or something.
Correct.
Okay.
And if I may add to that, yes, I think there would be concerns from the community on the equity front if we were to go that route.
Yeah.
But from a market perspective, it would self-regulate because the leases may go up on the Manhattan Avenue
Right.
side.
All right. Manhattan. Right. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions right now?
I guess to follow up, though, what happens if one of the restaurants goes out of business and there's a proposal for a different use there? There'd be a pad in front of what had been used as a restaurant space.
Yeah.
Aren't we freezing in place a certain land use where we're not going to allow, or explain what could happen with that existing pad if it no longer has a restaurant pertinent to it?
So the concept behind the sidewalk widening is when the restaurant isn't in operation, the railings would be removed, so it'll become public space for the pedestrians to use, so it'll be a wider sidewalk.
But yet, it's not consistent, excuse me, it's not consistently laid out. In fact, can we call up the diagram that shows the proposed
That sounds
layout?
dangerous, doesn't it?
That's sort of how it is today, except there's no railings around the sidewalk dining areas. And the
The,
dining is.
No, but the
always-
slopey ones.
Oh, so the slope, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Keep it.
One more question is, let's say another restaurant wants to open up where there is not currently an extension. What is the ability to add an extension to that space?
So to answer that question, we are seeing more applications for eating and drinking establishments where they take their indoor or building footprint to create a partially unenclosed outdoor dining area
So
on
it's
private
within the
property.
envelope
Yes,
of, I
like hook
think-
and plow, for instance. We see more instances going forward that way.
And finally, at this preliminary stage, it is anticipated that it would be the city, perhaps with outside funding sources, that would pay for this extension of its right-of-way as opposed to seeking contributions from the adjacent property owners?
Yes, we did a targeted outreach last summer through early this winter to see if there is any willingness from the businesses to contribute. It ranged from between 10 to 65K, depending on the scale of the business. They are definitely interested, but to some it was cost prohibitive, and they were seeking if there could be some concessions, such as waiving the sidewalk dining use fees until they can reap their investment. So there is an interest, but we're not really sure what that amount would be until we actually have a cost and a plan ahead of us.
That's it for now. Thank you.
Councilmember Shirley, did you want to add something? Or are you good?
No, I'm good. I think we need to continue to
Okay.
get more questions.
All right. All right, so let's continue.
Okay.
Let me go back through all my,
The next component of the preferred program vision is on-street parking reconfiguration. As you can see in this example, we're taking the parallel spaces near the Strand along MBB and reconfiguring into angled spaces to increase the supply of on-street parking spaces. The purpose of the parking reconfiguration is twofold. First being, in order to accommodate wider sidewalks, we'd have to move the street configuration, and also in order to eliminate the number of on-street parking spaces eliminated. And based on the preliminary plans, there will be a net loss of 7 on-street parking spaces in order to comply with ADA requirements in the right-of-way. However, with the parking strategies that are proposed, which we'll get into later on in this presentation, we may still be able to make this concept work with the parking alternatives and strategies that we may implement to offset the loss. These are maps of downtown and North Manhattan Beach, where parking reconfiguration is proposed, new ADA spaces added, new parking spaces added, or existing spaces removed. Staff is available for any questions regarding the parking configuration.
Mayor Pro Tem
I had a
Lesser.
quick question on slide 13, if you could show that, please.
Sure.
Is there a reason why, at present, on the south side of Manhattan Beach Boulevard by the pier, we don't have the angled spaces presently?
Question.
We do.
No, it's
On
saying
the south side of Manhattan
South
Beach
Pier
Boulevard.
lot.
On the north side, we do, but on the south,
Are
we
you
don't.
talking about right here?
I am.
Yeah, why wouldn't we?
So we do. We have diagonal parking on both sides of Manhattan Beach Boulevard between Ocean and the Strand, and that was part of our alternative parking. Is it something somewhere else?
You're talking about the pier lot.
I'm looking at slide 2 where it shows existing and it shows proposed.
You see, it's the
And I'm
lot.
just wondering why proposed isn't existing.
It is.
Then why
is.
is it
And
like
why is
this?
it shown like this in this slide?
So we added the diagonal parking as part of
the
Lot
emergency
3's
Okay.
That explains
alternative
it.
parking.
Thank you. That was my
Well, then
confusion.
there's nothing.
Thank you.
This isn't, okay. Great. So this is really not, this has already been done. Yes. Great work. Okay. And the other parking restriping changes have also been done for the most part, correct? If you look at that one, yes.
Yes, nine spaces have been already restriped as part of the closure of Lot 3.
Yeah. Okay. All right, does anybody else have any questions on the parking at this moment? Okay, let's keep going.
The last component of the preferred program vision is public flex space improvements that is intended to cater to the general public and not just diners to counterbalance privatization of public spaces for commercial uses. Essentially, public flex space improvements are opportunities for seating, bike parking, landscaping, public art, lighting, trash, and recycling bins in the right-of-way that creates a sense of place. And to illustrate, this is a very basic rendering of the northeast corner of Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Manhattan Avenue that can be transformed into something more aesthetically pleasing and pedestrian-friendly like this, with public serving amenities that cater to various users. Based on the preliminary plans, there are 26 potential locations identified for such improvements in downtown and North Manhattan Beach that range in size depending on the location and surrounding improvements. Are there any questions regarding public flex space improvements?
Yes, Councilmember Franklin.
Yes, so, thank you. So if you can go back to the stars, to the previous slide,
Slide 19.
or to 19?
Yeah, slide 19.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there. So you've got the yellow star indicating the large square footage. And it's on the corner of Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Manhattan Avenue. So which spaces are those? What's a large area there that could be potentially used for a flex space? Is that where the pizza place is? And
That would be where the beach, by everything but the water, the retail store, between the Manhattan Beach Pizzeria and Dashi Dashi.
So it's in the middle of the block.
Yes.
And is it large enough to accommodate a?
These measurements are based on the preliminary plans where the engineers actually went out to measure how much can be improved.
So if I
So-
could expand on that just a little bit, the preferred vision widens the sidewalk along the north side and the south side. That gives you extra room that you don't have now, that some of that could be used
Right.
for.
So because it's a retail,
It's a retail frontage, so it's not being used for sidewalk dining. So there's an opportunity there for flex space.
gotcha. Okay, that clears it up then. All right.
Yeah, yeah. That does help, because I think we all had the same question.
And,
Go ahead, sorry.
and I was going to say, and then on the opposite side, on the south side of the street, you have another star in the same area, aren't those?
That's in front of the Skechers.
Oh, in front of the Skechers store, okay. Oh, yeah, there was another diagram where it showed it closer to Manhattan Avenue. Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
And these are the spaces that our city manager mentioned that the Coastal Commission was very interested in pursuing, if we were to pursue this program vision. They would like
Yes.
these to be in because they,
Because it enhances the coastal access and coastal recreational opportunities for the general public.
okay, all right.
And so it serves two purposes. Number one, if we are not going to replace parking one for one, you have to propose some other sort of public access improvement. So it serves that purpose, and then also it helps balance the privatization of public right-of-way.
Right, okay. Okay, yes,
So-
Councilmember Franklin,
so-
oh, sorry,
so-
then I'll get to you, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, is there someone?
Go ahead. and
Go ahead,
then-
Okay,
finish.
so on that point, you know, in the Coastal Commission, analyzing that, is there some equivalency? Like, is it, we're giving up 7 parking spots, so they're going to want to see 7 public areas, or
No.
square footage, or anything like that?
They're not able to quantify it for us. They take a look at it holistically.
So if we did 2 flex spaces, is it realistic? They're
Or
saying,
10.
well, you need to be,
We have to look at the number of parking spaces and the overall privatization of the public space and try to balance that out internally before we propose it to them.
okay, because some of these flex spaces are more than more than the square footage of a parking space. So I just wanted to get an idea of the relative, you know, number.
It's not quantified
That
at
if we
this
had to
time.
give up a flex space, we're not going to.
Maybe we can be flexible, giving up
Yeah.
those flex spaces. Sorry. Okay, you,
That's it.
okay. Councilwoman Tornay.
I understand this is a outdoor dining task force, but have we approached other businesses, retail businesses, about the spaces in front of them that they would have the opportunity to use that space as well?
During the stakeholder interviews, we did interview non-eating and drinking establishments. This concept did come up, but I don't believe it was welcomed because it's not something that they can personally utilize for commercial uses. But on the other hand, some takeout establishments welcome this idea because they don't have places for their customers to sit down and get a cup of coffee or their acai bowls to enjoy. So it was a mix. But I think this is something that actually has to be implemented and realized for the public to actually see the benefits of what it can bring.
A couple more things during the stakeholder interviews. I think it was reported back to the council that the retailers did experience increased foot traffic as a result of the outdoor dining opportunities, the increased outdoor dining opportunities. So there were some benefits. There were some also mentioned some drawbacks, but other retailers did mention there were benefits of the increased foot traffic. And then also going back to one of the original decisions of the task force or recommendations to the council, which the council then told us to proceed with, was that the program would be limited to eating and drinking establishments only. And so it wasn't really, it didn't evolve as a study of all establishments. It was really focused on dining.
Thank you.
We do have Steve Shrillian, or Councilmember Shrillian would like to speak. And I have a follow-up question.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yep.
Great. First of all, again, thank you for the committee. It's been a long road to get here. Still got work to do, and thank you to staff for all the hard work and collaboration putting all this together. Quick question, Jahi, on the flex spaces, and I can appreciate the level of detail on these. There is no offset of revenue on these. This is something that the city would fund, and there's no real funding opportunities. Is that correct?
That is correct, but when we do see grant funding opportunities, it'll be a holistic package of if there are elements from the public flex spaces that are a key highlight of the funding sources, key objectives, then it's something we would definitely want to highlight to get more chances of receiving those funds for these purposes.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. My question is a bit of a follow-up to Councilwoman Tournay. So our direction was for eating and drinking establishments. We're saying some of these flex spaces are near retail, but would there be a way for retail to, say, use these spaces, whether it's for sandwich boards or whether it's for, so-and-so wants to put a chair in front of their door so people, or, something, can the retail use those spaces as well? Maybe there's nothing in our code now, but if we have these spaces, I guess if it's an offset of public space, it would really not make that function, but what are the thoughts there? And I'm looking to you, Jihei, and also Tolleen, but go ahead.
So in Title 7 of our municipal code, there is a section that allows for long-term commercial use of the right-of-way. That could be an avenue that can be explored for those that do want to take some space in this public flex space area or in the right-of-way in general. And that request would have to come before the city council as a discretionary review.
All right. And there is, one of the things as we look at these pieces of the preferred program, we could decide to widen certain areas and put in flex spaces and not do other things, right? I mean, one way to look at this could be downtown beautification and not just, more capacity for restaurants. Again, but I'm just throwing things out there. I don't really, I'm agnostic-ish at this point, but I'm just pointing that out. Councilmember Franklin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Horwath. So going back to the flex spaces, so we see there on slide 19, there's a total of 23 plus 3, 26 flex spaces. I'm going to say proposed. Has the cost of that been figured into the financial analysis?
It has
Because
been
we're not charging
included.
anybody rent, right? We're not-
Yes, it has been included in the cost estimate that was part of the attachment.
Okay. So there is going to be a line item saying cost of flex spaces not associated
Yes,
with the
yes,
eating or dining?
yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, great. Any other questions at this time? Good questions, comments. All right, continue on.
This is a segment of the conceptual plan that was prepared in-house to introduce the preferred program vision. And this is part of the preliminary plans of the same street segment that was prepared by MIG to further assess the technical and financial feasibility of the concept. Based on the preliminary plans, the cost to implement the project is estimated to be $13 million, which includes design and engineering, construction, contingencies, and so forth, in which downtown accounts for $11 million and North Manhattan Beach $2 million. If the project is vetted and approved by the City Council to move forward, staff will research grant opportunities that we can apply for and customize the application per the funding source's objective. And it should be noted that bond issuance was briefly discussed at the April 16, 2024 meeting with cost recovery options that we may further explore. Due to the high costs and also the need to break up the construction in multiple phases, since we need to avoid busy seasons in downtown, a conceptual construction phasing plan was prepared with 11 phases that can either be standalone or combined with one another. And the construction activity alone is anticipated to take up to 16 months, but that's not based on consecutive months. As I've mentioned, we need to take breaks in between to avoid those busy seasons. So the overall completion would take longer. Are there any questions related to the preliminary plans?
Hold on. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm trying to find it in the staff report, but there was an estimate to essentially make the two sides of certain of those streets symmetrical. What streets are being considered where there might be an opportunity to make them also have extensions, and how much more would that cost?
So let me go back to
Just
the,
as a rough order of magnitude.
yes, sidewalk widening slide that highlighted the areas. So what you're seeing now, if there is a red highlight on that block, you can assume that entire block would be rebuilt and redone. With the opposite side having the same aesthetic without the widening, that would be an additional $8 million that's estimated.
So it's only for, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So the 13 million only includes where it's red.
Yes.
And so if we wanted it to be symmetrical, well, we'd lose more parking as well.
Without widening sidewalks, but just having the same aesthetics.
Oh, okay. So, excuse me, if I could ask the public to a little less side conversations and whisperings, it's just distracting for my little brain, so help me out there. So you're saying you wouldn't be widening the sidewalk, but you would be giving it a similar aesthetic treatment, and how much more would that be?
$8 million.
So $8 million to do everywhere across the street from a red stripe or, you know, the widening.
Where it's
Thank
being
you.
improved.
Okay, thank you.
So if I may interject, one of the comments we heard was that if we were going to improve the sidewalks on one side and eliminate the blue tiles, for example,
Right.
The council wanted to know, well, what's it going to cost to make it look the same on the other side? So we don't have blue tiles on one side and not on the other.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. It would look kind of funky.
I'm struggling with something. What is the public interest with this? Because we're talking about an extension of the sidewalk, but it's extension of the sidewalk, which is the public land, public right-of-way, into the public road. So how could we even characterize the public interest here? Because it clearly offers significant benefits to the proximate businesses right in front of those areas.
That is correct, but with the sidewalk widening, with the typologies that you can see here, we'll be able to create a wider pedestrian pathway because we've heard repeatedly from the community how congested and narrow it is and how dangerous that could be. But by widening the sidewalks, we provide them an opportunity so they don't bump into the servers that go to their customers with food and drinks. It's more of a pleasant walking environment, an enhanced environment with uniformity.
So one public benefit would be safety. Second benefit, I'm assuming, is it would, in theory, attract more visitors to our downtown because there'd be greater capacity. I guess I'm trying to articulate a little bit better why we're considering this as a community using public funds to make these improvements, and I'm not hearing enough of that. And I'm one who enjoys outdoor dining. I'm sympathetic, but I'm not hearing enough of the case as to why we're even considering this as a public expenditure.
And I'm not sure she can answer that for us.
Okay.
But I'm going to ask our colleague, Councilmember Franklin, you had pressed the button to speak or ask a question?
Okay, yes, thank you. As with many projects now, given the impact of the tragic fires, 16,000 homes, I don't know how many businesses and infrastructure and everything like that that's going to need to be built in Altadena, Palisades, Malibu. We're going to be, coming up with plans and going to a limited, or there's a finite number of builders and the like. Has that been factored in terms of either additional timelines or costs or anything? I mean, it's hard to know, but.
Yes.
Oh, the microphone is being passed.
Yeah.
Eric Lee, Public Works Director. There's a knowledge shortage of construction workers in the Southern California area right now and predicted to be exacerbated in the coming months and years as the rebuilding in Southern California happens. And so I don't think that's been factored into this analysis per se, but certainly as a staff, we know that this is one of the many tensions we'll have to manage if moving on this project. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I would just add to that based on council's direction, staff has to prepare the code amendments and then move forward through the Planning Commission and council process and then through the Coastal Commission process. And so we do have to build that time in if the project were to move forward in one form or another.
Sure. Well, we'll be in sync with those affected areas because they're got to be doing the same thing or something similar. They've got some relaxed standards,
Correct.
Which why can't they pass on to us is the question, but that's okay. But it just seems that there's going to be a lot of activity, a lot of building activity going on just within eyesight. I mean, we can see up there.
And as Director Lee has mentioned, that would impact potentially all city projects, not
Right.
just one. Yes.
Right. Yeah. You done? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that, whatever we want to do, I was going to say, no matter if it's parking lot 3, if it's, finishing the community center or starting it, the community center, any of these things, all of us as a community will be seeing the impacts of the construction industry. If it's something I want to do, if it's a vision that we share, I think we still have to go for it. If that were the case, and push and not, yes, that's going to be an issue. I had a question, and it might be for you, Madam City Manager, since you were a Community Development Director, but Jihei, please jump in if you want. So there's been a ton of work done with direction by a couple of different councils, by the members of the task force and staff with a ton of impact. Let's say we say, no, we're not going to widen streets, or we're not going to put in pads. Let's say that. Please tell me there's something that comes from this, some kind of benefit to our city and our community from this that, that I'm missing, like operationally for, code amendments, Perhaps you can speak to that?
So in the end, if we go to the conclusion slides, we do provide some options on the next steps moving forward, whether to proceed with the preferred program vision or alternatives, where we can salvage some of the task force recommendations into code amendments for operational standards.
Got it.
Also taking the public flex space into a CIP project as part of the beautification of downtown and North Manhattan Beach, and also the parking strategy studies that we can implement as part of the Parking Lot 3 project or other parking-related projects in the future.
So I'm sorry that I rushed ahead, because that's kind of where my head was going, and I'm sitting here thinking about, even as I'm listening to it now, well, I guess these are still questions. I'm so sorry. Keep going. Are there any other questions right now on this part? No. Okay.
The next slide would be going over the fiscal impact analysis. The consultant team also included work scope to analyze the fiscal impacts of outdoor dining with a focus in downtown and North Manhattan Beach by comparing the second and third quarter of 2022 with that of 2023. And they found that the temporary outdoor dining program had a positive impact on overall sales, including retailers and parking revenue. However, both revenues declined and underperformed compared to city and county trends, even after the repurposed on-street parking spaces returned to parking. And based on their analysis, the proposed program is anticipated to have greater operational fiscal gains due to sidewalk dining use fees that may be imposed, as they were waived during the temporary outdoor dining program, and with fewer parking spaces eliminated. As you can see in the table, it's a comparison of the temporary program and what we're proposing today with, in terms of the loss of on-street parking spaces, the estimated additional dining seats, and the city's net operational fiscal gain per year. Are there any questions related to this topic?
There are. Councilmember Franklin?
Yeah, okay.
I can see it.
So first of all, we mentioned earlier that we were going to give residents an opportunity to ask questions at different stages.
Well, to make public comments.
Or public comments?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I did say that, and if they have questions or comments they want to make now, they can. We've been asking a lot of questions. I will make sure there's plenty of opportunity. So.
Because I can wait till after we get a couple of them.
Well, if you want to do your question, we could do our
Okay.
questions. Like, that's why I stopped. I was just about to make a comment, and I realized I shouldn't make any comments till I hear from the public. So if we're asking questions, go for it.
Okay, so questions. So we see on that chart, we're moving from 830 temporary estimated. We really didn't do a count of each deck, I don't believe, and then they were all reconfigured and the like as we went along. So 830 versus 580, a net gain or loss of 250 seats. So we're extrapolating from the COVID time, all right? The reason I asked about, the COVID timeline and extrapolating these specific financial numbers is that was a very different time. And I just want to know if this was factored into it. I mean, people were being paid to stay home. People, there was a lot of, what was it, care money, I believe? Is that what we called it? Care money. The city itself got a whole lot of money. Individual homes got, homeowners. People were, in their homes. They wanted to get out. It was a different environment than it is today. And I'm just wondering if you had any of that kind of discussion. People had money that they couldn't spend on. They couldn't go on their vacations. There was a lot of pent-up demand. My daughter was in hospitality. She was seeing hotels being filled just with local travelers, that type of thing. And I guess the point I'm making is, there might have been more money available for dining then than there is now. Also, there's the back to office. People, had to come back, to work. So was in your analysis, was any of that discussed in terms of the financial environment?
I do know that they took into consideration seasonal events or the market trend in terms of how outdoor dining evolved at the time, but I'm not sure if the details go into the specifics of what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I will have to double check.
Yeah, because we did notice, there is a slowdown, you lay that out very nicely between Q2 and Q3 of
Yes.
2022, when we were in the height of COVID, and everybody, had more expendable money. I mean, that's generally kind of known and it's available. And then Q2, Q3, 2023, where it wasn't as robust, right, for people, because that, again, was things were opening up. So, so there really wasn't any specific discussion of that? Did it come up?
I don't believe so, because this was trying to make apples-to-apples comparison with the data available that they had, which is based on the sales tax data, the parking revenue data, and any other market factors that were happening at the time that is applicable to today. So I think it's not as specific to what you have mentioned, but they did try to get to an apples-to-apples comparison
Sure.
as much as possible.
Yeah, just gross revenues that came
Yes.
in. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good questions. Other questions from my colleagues? It looks like Councilmember Shrillian has his hand up.
Thank you.
When you see me looking at my phone, that's what I'm doing. I'm checking for hands raised
Not checking
in DC.
scores of a game.
I am checking scores of LAFC too. Okay.
For the record, it was a hands up emoji. Jehi, real quick, just on the 580 additional seats and the revenue fiscal gain, the range between 460 and 519.20. So if you were to, is it a 1-for-1 kind of match? Is it if we did half the seats, would it be half the net fiscal gain?
Because it's based on gross, I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from my colleagues? So I want to
Madam
apologize.
Mayor?
Yep.
May I just add something to Councilmember Franklin's question?
Of course.
Our latest reports on sales tax do show that the latest quarters, restaurant and hotels, sales tax increased 1.3% over the prior year quarter. So if that helps a little bit, put it
So
into
our hotel,
perspective.
if you can just say that again, I was trying to.
Restaurants and hotels category sales tax increased about 1.3% from the prior year's quarter.
So like 20, if you can just tell me the years again.
Just quarters.
Sure.
We're
Libby,
just,
you want to jump in?
right? Are you
No,
talking
I
about
mean, was
quarters?
it 2023 to 2024?
Hello, Libby.
Hi, good evening. Libby Bredhauer, Financial Services Manager. So the numbers that Talene was providing is just the latest data that we have for that category of restaurants and hotels increased 1.3%. But if the question was actually prior years, is that correct?
Well, 1.3% from what year to what year?
This is data for the third quarter of 24 compared to the third quarter of 23. So there's always a lag in sales tax data that we receive.
Okay, got it. So from 2023, which quarter again? I'm sorry?
Looking at third quarter.
Third quarter, so that's putting us into late summer, early fall, right? To 2024
Same time period.
summer, or same?
July through September.
Okay,
Quarter.
so Q3.
So the summer quarter.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, got it. Went up 1.3%. Great, thank you. Well, that reflects kind of what I said, we were getting back to traveling and
Yeah.
things like that.
And I just want to clarify for the public, I want to say public comment for when we go through the presentation, we're doing questions. We have questions over each of the items. So hopefully that will be fine for y'all, but I apologize for any confusion I may have caused. All right, continue on, Jihei. You're doing a wonderful job. This is a heck of a report. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Thank you. The consultant team also conducted a parking study with field observations using industry standards of the most conservative scenario that resulted in a recommended bundle of parking strategies. And if these strategies are implemented, it's expected to have a peak parking occupancy that's less than current levels, even after assuming the additional 181 parking spaces needed to accommodate the additional 580 sidewalk dining seats, with a net loss of 7 on-street parking spaces. The recommended bundle of strategies are summarized in this table with the desired outcome as well as the timeline and the cost for city to implement. The strategies that we may consider is street modifications, which is restriping, which we've partially done with the closure of Lot 3 by creating additional spaces throughout downtown. Encouraging shared parking on private lots with businesses that have complementary parking patterns. Valet service to efficiently use the limited parking spaces available. Building additional off-street parking spaces, which is creating more spaces on off-street garages or making improvements to existing lots. And the parking lot 3 could be a prime example of implementing this strategy in the future. And bringing on-demand shuttle service for local and short-distance trips, and encouraging bike rides with additional bike parking opportunities throughout downtown North Manhattan Beach, and bike valet service during peak seasons. And lastly, improving wayfinding signage so there is less excess circulation and we can direct drivers to off-street locations. In order to get to the peak parking occupancy levels estimated by the consultant, we'll have to implement all of the strategies listed, with the bike valet and wayfinding being optional. For this topic, we have Miguel Nunes, our sub-consultant from Fair and Peers, who prepared the parking strategy analysis to help answer additional questions you may have.
Yes.
Council, I just want to add one thing. At our last community meeting, a question was raised about the cost of some of these things. And I just wanted to clarify for the council and for the public that there would be a charge for these things, so this wouldn't be fully subsidized by the city.
The parking, some of the parking.
Bike valet, for example, if we
Bike
wanted
valet.
to go down that path.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, Councilmember Lesser.
Jenny, can you just go back to the prior slide, that one? And I just want to better understand what you said, even though I understand the consultant is available to define it. But what's known as peak parking occupancy is anticipated to be less 89% than current levels of 94%. And that's the case if we do what to achieve it? I'm lacking, I'm not seeing this
Isn't
statement.
that just the demand?
So with the preferred program vision, we're anticipated to have 580 sidewalk dining seats. And for 580 dining seats, it's anticipated to create a demand of 181 additional parking demand. And considering that we're already at a loss of 7 on-street parking spaces, the consultant team created this list of strategies. If this is implemented, then we can reduce it.
So this conception is based on implementing, and you just said this, I heard you say it, are adopting all of these parking strategies at some cost. Okay. Although some of them will be subsidized. Okay.
All right.
Just checking. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Franklin.
Okay, then back, please, to the chart, parking strategy analysis. So, City Manager Mirzakhanian, and you, I think you might have answered this, but a big complaint that is impacting negatively on bike usage is theft, is the e-bike theft. It doesn't take much to circumvent any lock that's been made out there, and people are just disheartened. They want to have their bicycles near them at the restaurant where they're eating. So is the bike valet roll up, park my bike, and they're going to provide security, and then I got to pay them something, or is it? And, because we have some bike corrals, right? We have 3 of them, I think, defined in the presentation. So is that coming up? I think it's, I don't know if it's
Yes,
coming up.
the
or-
next slides are the
It
potential
was
bike
somewhere in
parking
there.
locations.
Yeah, so is that, can people park their bicycles or e-bikes or scooters for free? Is that anticipated?
So the bike parking areas, the corrals that we're proposing may be used for bike valet in the future, depending on the needs, but the bike parking spaces that we'd like to make available is for the public to use at no cost, while the bike valet would be charged.
Right. Okay, so again, if I'm parking my bicycle by, Metlocks, by the, what's the furniture place there?
Waterleaf.
Waterleaf, thank you. But I'm eating at El Sombrero, I'm not going to be so keen about that. I mean, I'm just thinking we might want to consider a CSC
Yes.
type of security, just.
So other than the 5 potential locations that I'll present later on, the public flex spaces also include opportunities for bicycle racks. So it would be dispersed throughout different areas of downtown and North Manhattan Beach.
And our consultants did take a look at the proposed flex spaces with the bicycle racks, taking into account the establishments that are in downtown today that generate the need for bicycle racks.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. No, I'm just
Okay.
saying, security is going to be very, very important. And we may want to consider.
Eric would like to
Thank you very
comment
much.
on those e-bike concerns,
Yes.
security
Some of
concerns.
these flex-based locations, as well as the Metlocks locations, have the opportunity to have bicycle lockers, which is an enclosed space that's locked, and you can put your e-bike inside. And so it's much more secure than just having it on a bike rack with a lock. So those are possibilities in the downtown area too. We know that there's a lot of people that want to do the e-bikes. Maybe if it's some e-bike chargers, so you can charge your bicycle while you're dining or shopping or something like that. So there are opportunities for that.
Okay.
Other questions? Councilmember Shirley, are you good? Okay. All right. Jay?
So there were 5 potential locations that the consultant proposed to have bike corrals, 4 in downtown and 1 location in North Manhattan Beach. And these are street views of each location, the first being next to the US Bank in downtown, the second in front of Retailer Catwalk in downtown, the third on the upper level of Lot 4 in North Manhattan Beach, the 4th location at Metlocks along Morningside Drive, and the 5th location near Vori in downtown. Are there any questions related to bike parking?
Go ahead.
Well, just curious, so is that lot, is that seating area next to Viore, that's a public space?
Yes,
Oh, is it? Okay.
it is the public right-of-way.
Great. Okay. Good.
So far, we've discussed a lot of the physical improvements associated with the program development, and from here, I'd like to transition into more of the operational standards, referring to the task force recommendations. And I do want to emphasize that the task force recommendations are proposed regulations that are not yet definitive. As Talene has mentioned, we still have to go through the vetting process by PPIC, the Planning Commission, and the City Council to be adopted and go into effect, as well as the Coastal Commission. In terms of the proposed locations on private property, the task force is recommending utilizing existing private parking lots with excess parking spaces available, second floor decks within the building footprint of the eating and drinking establishment. For example, the Strand House and Esperanza are examples that we can see in Manhattan Beach. And also utilizing existing open spaces on private property, where an example is Zinc at Metlocks. In terms of public right-of-way, the task force recommended utilizing sidewalks only for outdoor dining. And in the beginning, there was some recommendations to potentially utilize select Walk Street commercial corners for outdoor dining. However, based on the targeted outreach to Walk Street residents, that didn't move forward at all the locations we had in mind. However, as the Walk Street commercial corners east of Manhattan Avenue at 10th Street is a little different in that it has somewhat of a buffer between the commercial corner where Uncorked and Manhattan Denim is with the multifamily residentials to the back. We presented 3 options for the City Council's consideration last year where no action was taken. And the 3 options include, first, maintaining the status quo, prohibiting commercial uses of walk streets, and continuing to allow sidewalk dining in front of the eating and drinking establishments per the code. Option 2 was similar to option 1, but we wanted to include public flex space areas along the walk street. And option 3 was amending the code and related policies to allow commercial outdoor dining on this particular walk street, however, prohibiting use of the sidewalk for outdoor dining for this eating and drinking establishment. And by doing so, if we move forward with the preferred program vision, sidewalk widening wouldn't be necessary for this street segment.
Okay. Are there questions?
Yes.
I have one.
Go for it.
Can you pull up the last slide we were just looking at?
Option 3?
Well, no, just this static picture. I just want to confirm, in the background there, those are residences, are there not?
Yes, those are, the multifamily residences are here
Right.
and here,
Oh, on the south side.
on both
Oh,
sides.
sorry,
Both sides.
I missed the
Yes,
first
yes,
laser,
yes,
sorry,
both
sorry.
sides.
I'm looking at my
Okay,
things.
thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Franklin.
Yeah, and mine was, and what exactly did we vote on?
There was no vote or action taken at
No
the
action.
It
time.
wasn't, okay, at that time, okay. And so option number 3, allow commercial use of Walk Street, but prohibit the use of sidewalk for outdoor dining. So what would you do, what kind of commercial use would there be on the Walk Street?
The dining.
Well,
So if I go back to
Of sidewalk.
the option 1 or 2, currently for Uncorked, if they do sidewalk dining, it'll be in front of their establishments.
oh, I see, yeah,
Yes.
where it is now, right?
Where it
Yes,
is now.
Where it is
Oh,
now.
okay. So
And
that's
option
the
3 would-
sidewalk.
Yes,
So if we do option 3, we wouldn't allow them to do it in front.
yes. that's
And so that would negate the need to
Right.
widen the
Right.
sidewalk there.
And so that would be a saved cost, because you wouldn't
Okay.
be widening the sidewalk there.
Gotcha, okay. It's clear now, thank you.
It's kind of hard on our papers to see it. So, other questions about the private, so again, these are sort of policy or code amendments, right? So you've got your private property, second floor deck and open space, and then on a separate kind of piece of it's the public right-of-way, Walk Street commercial corners, which we never decided upon. Okay. Oh, Councilmember Franklin, did you want to speak again?
Oh, no, I
Okay,
put that,
all right.
that's previous, thank you.
Okay, we'll clear that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Before we, let's see, let's keep going. Are we good to keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. We're gonna need a break at some point, but let's keep going. Or I should say, I'm gonna need a break at some point.
From here, I'll provide an overview of the recommendations from the task force that will apply to all outdoor dining types, starting with the eligible businesses that may be able to participate in the program would be limited to eating and drinking establishments, which are your typical restaurants and bars. And the permit process is proposed to be reviewed and approved at the staff level without public hearings, including instances where alcohol is being served, as long as it's allowed by the State Alcoholic Beverage Controls Review. In terms of occupancy, for instance, the sidewalk dining ordinance currently doesn't allow a net increase, as you're supposed to take indoor seats outdoors. However, based on discussions, the task force is recommending that we allow a net increase. And since with a net increase, there's added trash that we can anticipate, the task force recommended that prior to permit issuance, we need to make sure that adequately sized trash enclosures and service levels are available at the premises. And busing stations would be prohibited at these outdoor dining areas. And in order to hold permit holders accountable for their actions and operations, the task force proposed a 3 strikes and out rule, where once the permit is revoked, you wouldn't be able to reapply for 1 full year. However, if you are in good standing, once the permit is pulled, it would be valid in perpetuity and renewed on a yearly basis to ensure that they are in compliance with all regulations proposed. The vehicle loading provision being proposed not only applies to outdoor dining, but also to all other commercial loading activities, where based on the task force minutes, they proposed prohibiting large vehicle loading activities in residential areas and streets that are less than 36 feet in width for these timeframes. However, it's come to our attention recently by a task force member that the intent of this vote was to prohibit large vehicle loading activities at all times in the residential areas, and streets that are less than 36 feet in width will continue to apply with this timeline. In terms of the standard design elements, the task force recommended leaving the landscaping, color palettes, materials at the discretion of the establishment so they have an opportunity to match their interior design. However, they wanted to ensure that the materials be durable and of high quality, and that branding identification signs would be prohibited on shade structures and barrier fences. Are there any questions regarding overall recommendations?
I have just a clarification for the occupancy. So currently, right now, I'm thinking of Slay Italian. They have some tables outside, but does that mean they had to decrease their capacity inside?
Per our existing code as it's written, it should have been tables from inside going outside.
Okay.
So there is no net increase.
Okay, I mean, whatever, I just use it as an example. I wasn't trying to pick on them or anything, but that's the way it is right now, that we're not allowing an increase in capacity, even if they have, like, space to do it.
That's
Okay, did you want to add something? No, okay, all right, thank you. Councilmember Franklin.
Yes, so again, on the net, on the net increase. So right now, a restaurant has a mandatory limit, right, on the number of seats in the restaurant. And with the sidewalk ordinance that we have now, if they wanted to put 5 on the sidewalk, they had to take those 5 seats from the inside.
That's
There was no net increase.
Yes, that's
But
correct.
now with the new, with the sidewalk dining, okay, so let's say that there's 12 on the sidewalk. They don't have to move the 12 from inside. They just add that to it.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And just say in relative terms, I mean, how does that impact the ordinances that we have now? Are we expecting a 15% increase in seats versus where we are now? I just want to get an idea of the extra diners, extra, no offense, trash to the diners, just the extra things that created the occupancy number in the first place.
Yes, when we were doing the conceptual plans and looking at the sidewalk dining areas, we also estimated the number of seats. That's how we got to the 580 additional seats that we're
Right.
anticipating. And per establishment, it was somewhere between 8 to 12 or even 16, depending on the available frontage of the restaurant or bar. But it's important to note that the additional capacity that they can actually add to the sidewalk dining area is really dependent on their kitchen. If they don't have the capacity to serve that many people, they wouldn't be able to put as much seats out there.
Well, that's a factor, yeah. I mean, they could do some things, to the kitchen and the like. Okay, so just for folks who are not immersed in this, as maybe we are in this room, what are the factors that go in that determine occupancy, including fire safety and things like that? come on down.
Ryan Heiss,
Yeah.
Acting Community Development Director. Any restaurant or other business that wants to increase the occupancy would have to submit a tenant improvement plan to ensure they meet the building codes, the fire codes, health and safety codes. That would include, for health and safety, it's the kitchen, but also the restrooms, the exiting, the ADA accessibility, all of those codes regarding standard building and life and safety type codes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and then the 181
Additional parking.
additional
demand.
parking spaces is based upon that net increase, right,
Yes.
that we're seeing?
Yes.
Okay, and then what will our friends at the Coastal Commission say about that? You want to be putting in all these people, and we require 181 parking spaces, but you're in fact taking away 7. So how do we,
It's a combination of the public flex spaces where we align with the Coastal Commission's goals and policies in increasing access to the coast and recreational opportunities, but also with the parking strategies that would be bundled up in a package where we'll demonstrate that the peak parking levels could actually be reduced to a certain level.
by the bike valets and
Yes, the street modifications,
things like
the
that
added
to-
parking capacity.
just going back to that chart, I mean, do we have any of that implemented today to really
The
see?
street modification, the first one on the table, has been partially implemented with the closure of Lot 3 by providing roughly
Yeah.
86 spaces throughout downtown. And the others, I'm aware that the on-demand shuttle, that's something that staff is discussing with a potential vendor to bring it on. Bike parking, it's something that we're always looking to install throughout the city where it's needed. Wayfinding signage, I believe it could be part of the signage improvements throughout downtown and North Manhattan Beach. And the shared parking, for instance, with the closure of Lot 3, that's something that we temporarily implemented. So it's something we can further explore as well.
Okay. So what we have to do with the Coastal Commission, I mean, so let's say we put all this time and effort into the planning and everything, and then the Coastal Commission says, no, you're not going to reach that 181, you're not going to cover that. What do we do? Do we have to,
They might.
It's happened before.
do we have to?
So I'll jump in here. We have been coordinating with the Coastal Commission very closely throughout this entire effort to get their feedback as we go along. And now, of course, we're coordinating with staff, and ultimately the decision is with the commission itself, but staff makes a recommendation, and they generally understand what the Coastal Commission is looking for. So the feedback that they are providing us and that we are incorporating as we proceed with the recommendations is based on the staff's input. Now, at the end of the day, the expectation is that the council may ask for some tweaks, right? But hopefully, if we have complied with, the recommendations of the staff, it's not going to be a massive request from the Coastal Commission. Yeah. That is the goal in terms of why we're coordinating with staff as we're moving forward.
Coordinating with staff of the Coastal Commission, who really do, I've watched the Coastal Commission, some of us have been there before, they really do pretty much act on what staff says. Can we turn to some other council members for questions?
Oh, sure, oh, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to quickly circle back to a question that Councilmember Tarnay asked earlier about businesses that might be able to avail themselves of this program. When there's a list here of the task force recommendations, and the first one of the overall recommendations are eligible businesses, and it indicates eating and drinking establishments. Was that done just to define the scope and limit the scope, or did the task force actually consider other uses beyond eating and drinking establishments?
It was in order to limit the scope, as we've done other policy document reviews and case studies, and most of the programs that we refer to, which is based on San Diego or Capitola, they had some form of limited scope or defined boundaries.
I'm just thinking of other potential usages that we have perhaps not even considered here, which might mean retail or somehow making a mixed use downtown as opposed to what some residents who've written to council members are concerned about, which is that we're just going to be a larger food court. with a view.
So,
So-
Councilmember, if I
Yes.
could just jump in for a quick
Good,
second.
food court.
We did bring that recommendation from the task force to the council earlier, and the council did provide us to the direction to limit the scope. So the action that the task force and staff has taken thus far is based on that direction from the task force and the council ultimately, several months ago. And then I would just like to add that the bigger this scope gets, the more we have to give back as it relates to the Coastal Commission. So please keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Are
That's
you,
good.
okay, and then Councilmember Shirley from afar.
Yes, unmute myself. Jay, quick question. So 580 seats, to me, that's equivalent to 7 or 8 or maybe even 9 restaurants, adding like potential of that many restaurants for that many seats. We already have an exacerbated problem with the trash enclosures. They can't even meet the trash policies we have now. What were the recommendations to offset some or mitigate some of that concern?
In order to pull a permit for outdoor dining opportunities, as stated in this, the first slide, we would need to ensure that they have adequate sized trash enclosures on their private property and service level. So those are things that the waste management team will be considering before the permits are actually issued. So in that capacity, we're trying to limit the size of the outdoor dining area, as well as keeping in mind that we want to make sure there's no increase in trash that has always been repeatedly heard as a concern. But I can defer it back to Anna Luke for additional information on the refuse-related questions.
No, and I appreciate that. To me, it was more a number like 580 seats is equivalent to potentially 8 or 9 new restaurants opening up. So I understand they have to pull a permit, but how can we accommodate potentially like 580 new seats, which is equivalent to like 8 restaurants meeting trash enclosures where we can't barely having struggles now?
Okay. I don't think there was a question in that, but going back to the vehicle loading, I mean,
I thought it was a question.
no, it's more of a comment.
Well, do we have the capacity to expand our trash collection?
The expectation, based on the proposed recommendations here, is that each dining establishment, whether it be in downtown or North End under this program, would have to find a way to accommodate their own refuse based on how much they are, how many seats they are including in their outdoor dining area. So it puts the onus on the restaurateur to determine how they are going to accommodate the increased refuse that is being generated.
They may have to build a bigger trash enclosure. They may have to have more pickup.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll all depend on, what the council ultimately decides for the refuse ordinance that will be coming back to council.
Right.
So it'll be in accordance with the regulations that are in effect at the time. But the idea here is that the restaurateur is responsible for accommodating the additional refuse that's being generated by the additional seats. Otherwise, we would not be addressing the concerns of the public that came through the community engagement process.
Right. It's to Councilmember Sherlan's point, it's an intensification of use.
Correct.
So if we are not proposing a plan to address the intensification of use, it still may not be satisfactory to some, right? But Councilmember Sherlan, did you have anything else to ask?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's a little awkward there. Okay, I wanted to ask about the vehicle loading. I was a little confused. It says prohibit large vehicles that are less than 36 feet from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., but then you said the actual recommendation was?
So the minutes, based on the minutes, that's what's written in the slide, but in speaking with a task force member, their recollection of the meeting is that they wanted to prohibit it at all times in residential areas.
In streets that are less,
And for the streets that are less than 36 feet in width would comply with the 11 to 4 and 6 to 4.
okay, so
Yes.
all residential, no loading, but in streets that are less than 36 feet, it would be those hours. Okay,
Yes.
that, okay. So, all right. Okay. Councilwoman Tornay.
Conceptually, I can see on Manhattan Avenue, if we were to expand the sidewalk and businesses that come and go, or dining opportunities that come and go, say a restaurant is there, and then the next restaurant comes in, they don't want the outdoor dining, they would remove the barrier and the seating. Conceptually, I see a problem on Manhattan Beach Boulevard. What happens right now if, say, in front of one of those establishments, they don't want outdoor dining, and the next one comes in and wants it, or vice versa? How do we handle those situations?
Thank you. That's a good question. To answer that, we have thought about that as well with regard to this platform dining areas. It takes a lot of work to construct that. If the restaurant that's there wants to have outdoor dining, they would have to construct that, or it would have to be constructed, and they would pay for it in some manner. If a restaurant leaves, it's the city's option what they might want to do with that. So they could leave it in place, thinking that maybe the next restaurant would want to use it. In the meantime, it's a public space. It could be, it could have seating, outdoor seating on it, just to enjoy the sunset. It could be open to the public. It wouldn't be used by the restaurant if the restaurant's not paying for it. It's also an option for the city council to say, or the city to say, if you leave, you have to remove it as well. And it can be designed in a way that you can remove it and then make it just generally a wider sidewalk. And then it's to the general benefit of the public to have a wider sidewalk in that area.
Okay. Thank you. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions at this time? Okay,
10 more slides.
all right.
The next slides will go into the specific outdoor dining type regulations that are being proposed for sidewalk dining. It's proposed to be allowed in downtown and North Manhattan Beach only. For private property outdoor dining, it's proposed citywide on parking lots with excess spaces and existing open spaces. Second floor decks would be also proposed in citywide commercial zones that do not face residential uses and are at least 15 feet away. Hours of operation will generally be until service stops at 10 p.m. and the outdoor dining area is cleared by 10:30 p.m., including instances for private property outdoor dining within 150 feet of residential uses. Otherwise, they would match the use permit conditions. There were lengthy discussions amongst the task force regarding live entertainment and amplified music, and they are proposing to use the existing permits in place to allow both activities from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. and enforcing the city's noise ordinance by using the reasonable person test found in our municipal code. For sidewalk dining, they're proposing ambient music with speakers be allowed as long as the speakers are placed on private property, with limits on live outdoor entertainment limited to special events. While both activities will be allowed with permits on private property, however, for second floor outdoor dining areas, because it's very sensitive to noise, they wanted to propose completely prohibiting both activities, including instances where the area is not fully enclosed on the same level, with no exceptions. In terms of roof and shade elements for sidewalk dining areas, they're proposing to prohibit umbrellas along the east-west direction streets, such as Manhattan Beach Boulevard, in order to preserve views. On the other hand, private property will be at the discretion of the establishment. Other regulations proposed include having a maximum 42-inch barrier fence for sidewalk dining areas, and also limiting heaters to natural gas and electrical heaters, and a sidewalk dining use fee that is tiered based on the location and alcohol service. And for private property, propane heaters will be allowed as they have the sufficient capacity or space to store the propane tanks better than the sidewalk dining areas. And for second floor outdoor dining areas specifically, they're proposing a noise attenuation measure be incorporated into their interior design to mitigate the sound, and also having barrier walls when it's abutting residential uses. And balconies above the right-of-way would continue to be prohibited. The annual renewal for each dining permit will follow the current practice, and that sidewalk dining will be on June 30th, and private property that's not second-floor decks will be on March 1st. And any deviations from the proposed regulations will be reviewed before the Parking and Public Improvements Commission for sidewalk dining, and for private property outdoor dining, the request will be reviewed by the Planning Commission through a use permit, which is a discretionary review. Are there any questions regarding the proposed regulations?
Let's see, let me go back to here. I mean, just questions again right now on the recommendations. I don't think I have any questions on these recommendations. I mean, go ahead, Councilmember Franklin.
Okay, sure. On the music, live entertainment and amplified, on the sidewalk dining. So we're going to allow speakers on the outside of the building?
As long as it's on private property, yes.
Okay, it's private property. So one thing is I've been hearing some places that have been doing it, you know, and are we going to have like any decibel level allowed? I mean, it can be distracting, you know, and you're going to have this relatively small, you know, dining area. I mean, depending upon the size of the dining establishment. So, I mean, is it just to set the mood, but is it going to be heard across the street? I mean,
It was mostly for the ambiance that the task force recommended, having amplified music to create that inviting, welcoming environment that people seek.
And to add to that, decibel levels doesn't really work in this scenario, which is why it says the reasonable person test, because depending on the time of day, the ambient noise levels differ. And so if you have 10, let's say you have 50 decibels at a certain time of day, I'm just picking a number here, it sounds different than when you're either at a much busier time of day or a much more quiet time of day. And so it's much harder to gauge when you're using a specific decibel level and to set limitations because the ambient noise differs.
Yeah.
I'm just envisioning walking up the street, you know, Manhattan Beach Boulevard from the pier, and you go by Shellback, Rockin' Fish, Bruco, what is it, next, Mangiamo, and the like, and each one of them have something like this. I mean, they're all pretty close, but then not even a block you're going to get. Could be four different styles of music, 4 different levels of sound of music. I mean, I understand it's nice, but I'm just wondering if it's something we could consider controlling.
We could consider changing their recommendations. I mean, this is, again, this is more of a comment on, I mean, we obviously could control it if we wanted.
The task force did discuss that, and based on the task force's recommendation, that there was belief that it would be self-regulating in a way because they wouldn't want to be impacting each other's businesses. But this issue did come up during the task force discussions.
Okay, and then who mediates that?
Okay.
Jim Burton has, you know, volunteering.
Well, I'm happy to be the music. I'm happy to be the music police. I am happy to go down and make it all be what I like. So we're good with that, right? Okay, cool.
Councilmember Shirley.
Yes. Oh my goodness, can I move on to?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. Councilmember Shrillian.
No, I'm good. Sorry, I was just fiddling with my pen.
Wait, you don't need to speak? Okay, did you have other?
At this time.
At this time, okay. Other questions right now? Okay. Before we go to, we need a break, because we need a break. So even though you have your code amendment initiation and direction needed, I was thinking it would be good to break now. Get that, then hear from the public comment, and then we'll have a lot of discussion on a lot of these. So we're going to take probably a 10 or even 12-minute break right now. I see a question from the audience.
Question. Because of the complexity of this proposal and the fact we couldn't ask questions going along, can we, more than 3 minutes, because we won't.
Potentially, Carol, we'll see how, we'll share it, we'll see how it goes. I mean, potentially, okay? So I'm sure we can work it out. I'm sure you'll get your questions answered. But we're going to take a 12-minute break here. What time is it right now? It is 7:42. Yeah, see ya. See ya, 7:54.
He hasn't turned on his camera. His camera's not on. He's connected, but he hasn't turned on his audio. Pegasus, can we go live?
I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody's indulgence there. We needed some sugar and a break. So I want to say this is so much information, as we all can see, that represents months and months of work from public members. And also, Jehi, you're just, what a great job you're doing presenting it. You know your stuff. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, where are we?
So, putting the preferred program vision aside, at this time, the City Council may consider initiating code amendments to reflect operational standards that have since changed with COVID by codifying some of the task force recommendations that can align with the current operations that we see today. And the scope of the amendments will target the existing outdoor dining provisions in the municipal code and local coastal program with a focus on operational standards such as the occupancy increase, allowing alcohol service in outdoor dining areas, codifying the second floor outdoor dining ordinance, and live entertainment, amplified music, and so forth. And by working on the code amendments, the city will be able to salvage some of the task force recommendations as well as align our current provisions with what we would like to see continue into the future or corrected.
Corrected, okay.
In conclusion, staff requests the City Council direction on options regarding the commercial walk streets east of Manhattan Avenue at 10th Street to either continue prohibiting commercial use of walk streets, which is maintaining the status quo, or same as above, but pursuing public flex space opportunities along the walk street, or amending the code to allow for commercial use of walk street dining for this particular location and prohibiting sidewalk dining in front of the eating and drinking establishment. And staff requests City Council direction on the future direction of the long-term outdoor dining program development, which may be developing plans to build out the preferred program vision by preparing construction documents, or as an alternative, proceeding without sidewalk widening, but initiating code amendments to update the operational standards with task force recommendations, incorporating the public flex space improvements into the CIP, and identifying parking strategies from the recommended bundle to implement as part of a separate parking-related project. And C is taking no action, in which case the alcohol service and the parking waivers that are associated with outdoor dining that will expire next July 2026, unless another bill is signed to extend beyond that relief period. And we may have to go back to our existing sidewalk dining ordinance or private property outdoor dining regulations to see how we need to strictly enforce all of those regulations. This is a table that summarizes the previous three options that I mentioned for next steps moving forward as it relates to the preferred program vision and code amendments. Option A is continuing to develop the preferred program vision into construction documents. Option B is an alternative to option A by foregoing sidewalk widening, but maybe considering incorporating some of the parking strategies to implement in the future, and incorporating the public flex space as a CIP with code amendments focused on operational standards, and C is taking no action. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for any questions you may have.
So, Council, I would suggest that we turn to the public at this time, as we can continue to ask questions on, the different types of direction they're requesting, unless anybody has a specific, any of my colleagues have a specific question at this time. Is that all right, or did you want to ask?
Sure. I have just one quick question.
Okay,
I
go
didn't hear
for
it
it.
mentioned in the staff presentation, but it is in the staff report, and that is AB 1217,
Yes.
and how that impacts the service of alcohol for outdoor dining currently and in the future, unless the legislature takes action.
Yes, that is correct. It's for the alcohol service and also the parking waiver associated with outdoor dining. Those reliefs will be available until July 2026, unless it's extended another time by a bill.
So that's what's mentioned.
Great, thank you.
Any other kind of quick kind of follow-up questions before I turn it over to the public? Okay. Now we turn over to public comments. And public questions, so if somebody has a lot of questions, I definitely want to hear them all. And we'll get the answers to them after the public comment period, right? So we don't answer them as they're happening, but we can do that. And I'm sure we'll be able to accommodate the questions. So public comments, please come forward and address us with 3 minutes. And if you have to go over, we'll make that happen. Hello.
Good evening, Council, Honorable Mayor. My name is Kristen Long Drew, a longtime resident. I love living here. I love Manhattan Beach. It's a great place to live. But I got to tell you, I don't know how this makes it any better. We all live here because we love the outside, and that's essentially what outdoor dining is, but at what cost? So through staff's incredible presentation, all I kept hearing was ding, ding, like more money, more money, more money, and it just keeps going. And that's just going to trickle down to us because we're paying for it, right? And then what about the smaller businesses like the Urkeles that doesn't use the outdoor dining and their rents go up and then they can't sustain themselves? All of this seems to be the antithesis of a small town. And you've talked about it ad nauseum. So I feel like I'm just begging you on behalf of the residents who make this small town, nip it in the bud. Let's end this. It's a beautiful place. And thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Oh, Martha, I love that coat.
Good evening, and thank you for your time and attention to this subject. It's been a while, and city staff, they're all sincere in trying to gather the comments and put them all together. This subject is a big deal, even, or maybe especially to a third-generation resident of the downtown. My grandmother opened one of the first restaurants in Manhattan Beach on Manhattan Avenue, and my grandfather opened one of the first real estate offices. So I support restaurants, I support real estate, but I'm feeling like Manhattan Beach might even be coming up for sale or lease to restaurant operators, with all taxpayers footing the bill. And I'd like to know if that's correct. It seems like it's not just restaurants that would be paying for this, it would be all the taxpayers. Tonight's agenda to consider preliminary plans to implement the long-term outdoor dining program's preferred vision has me nervous on a few fronts. The Outdoor Dining Task Force has only one member focused on the issues that impact downtown residents, and he's not allowed to speak this evening. While we applaud Jim Burton and the contributions that he's made, I'd like to remind you of the issues that impact residents of the downtown, which is different from how this subject may be viewed by residents citywide. The downtown is not only commercial, it is residential. In fact, there are more residential parcels than commercial parcels within the downtown district. To disrupt that balance negates the city's stated goal of protecting and promoting our small town charm. The charm that made people want to come to Manhattan Beach, made them want to stay here, and makes more people want to come. Do not allow the commercialization of the 10th Street Walk Street at Manhattan Avenue. That does involve code change for no good purpose. It's prohibit commercial vehicle loading and unloading activities related to outdoor dining on residential streets at any hour. My neighbors and I do not have an opposition to all outdoor dining, but we are against the current proposals because plans show an unnecessary intensification of open-air dining. We have outdoor dining at Metlocks Plaza, Manhattan Village Mall, and 27, we've counted, restaurants downtown already have patio dining within the footprint of their restaurant space or windows which open to sidewalks and open space which is adjacent to their restaurant. The cost estimates, I read in the staff report it was up to 16 million. Tonight I heard it might be 13 million, big numbers. To implement the proposed plans are huge, and that in of itself should cause us to pause, reflect, and reconsider our priorities. I own property on...
Can you finish up? I mean, I am trying to...
I thought we might have a few more minutes.
If there's questions, I want to make sure all the questions... Go ahead, Marcia, finish
the cost
up,
estimates should cause us to pause. I own property on Pacific Avenue that was recently impacted by a water main break at 31st and Pacific. We need to watch, guard, and look after our infrastructure. We want utility undergrounding, and as a safety issue, we should perhaps mandate undergrounding citywide. The proliferation of outdoor dining won't affect that. Although we supported outdoor dining during COVID, it was to keep up the vitality of the downtown and the North End. We also learned that outdoor dining brought increased problems with traffic, parking, trash, and noise. Lastly, with the implementation of the proposed plan, or even a portion of it, diners will not get an ocean view. So, one thing that didn't come up, I was thinking too, the permits. Permits go with, it's my understanding that permits go with the property, not just to a business. So we have to look at the long-term effects of issuing new permits as well. Again, thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you. What is it that...
My mom is at home on Zoom and she wants to speak, but she doesn't know how to ask, so I was asking to see how she could do that.
Yeah, hi, Mom. Your daughter's about to speak. Is it okay if, so what we usually do is we take all the comments in the chambers and then we open it up to people on Zoom. But is she asking to speak directly after you?
No.
Okay.
She wants to speak in general.
Okay.
She just didn't know how, so she was texting going, I don't know how to ask to speak. So I just want to make sure she knew through us that she...
Yeah. We'll make sure Mom gets to...
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I've spoken here many times before about all the concerns that I have about this. The noise, the congestion, the parking, the costs, the traffic, the vermin, the garbage, the aesthetics, and on and on. And I feel very frustrated because 3 minutes is never enough to say everything I want to say. And I actually really, even though I know Talon and Jay, worked very hard and they worked to try to address these issues, I still really don't feel like I'm hearing how you're really going to mitigate a lot of these things, because it feels like it's being spoken about in theory. And the one thing I'm really not hearing is like what the domino effects of this are going to be. It's one thing to do a study. It's another thing to look at what happens in reality. And when you create this space, now all of a sudden, all the landlords are like, oh, we can make more money because we have this added space we can rent out. And that's going to attract more dining establishments. So even if your purpose isn't to create an outdoor food mall, that is going to be more of the end result. And the end result is going to be that the taxpayers are going to pay not just $13 million, because then you have the $8 million to make it pretty, and then you've got the added costs of handling the garbage and the city services and everything on top of that annually. And then you have the fact that in order to make enough money, because Taco-licious was down there and had outdoor dining. In fact, most of what they had was outdoor dining, and they could not financially survive. So the only way these restaurants are going to be able to pay the kind of rents that are going to be required is to sell more alcohol. What's the consequence of that? It means more noise, more drunken behavior, more unruliness, more police necessity. I don't see like the thought process of like, what's that domino effect? And I also want to say that this 10th Street walk street that was shown, one of those residential properties, the one next to Uncorked, belongs to Don McPherson. Don McPherson is one of the people who fought to codify what was considered a sort of unspoken rule that we did not put commercial use on the walk streets. He is not here because he is ill, and if he were here, he would be bloody mad that I'm trying to be polite, that you're even considering removing this ordinance. So on his behalf and on our behalf, it's unfair to those property owners just because they're not using the walk streets to their full benefit now. It still decreases their property value should they want to sell, should they want to increase and use those encroachment properties in the future. And I really also want to emphasize, since I only have a few seconds left, the cost. I mean, it's not even just the fact that you have the Altadena and the Pacific Palisades fires. We still haven't even mentioned the fact that we are now with an administration that is unpredictable and is causing tariff wars and trade wars. What's that going to do? There's so many different layers of costs that are going in here that are hidden that we haven't even explored yet. And again, it just, to what end? Like,
Thank you.
There's so many other ways we could be spending this money. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, yeah, they don't have to. They don't have to. It's illegal to make them.
Hi, everybody, and to the new council members, welcome. I'm going to repeat a few things that I've said in the last number of years, but I just have to agree with Alexandra. 20 years ago, we passed this ordinance, hard-fought battle to protect our walk streets, the only green areas, the only public space areas for anybody to sit at, and we're talking about removing it from 10th Street. Not one person received a placard or information that was east of Manhattan Avenue. Not one person on that block from there to Highland received anything, and so they knew nothing about it. I asked people, what are you talking about? They didn't know. So anyway, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. You know, I don't mind the sidewalk dining. It's a little crowded, but I really don't mind it. But I really believe, bottom line, what you were proposing is anathema to the small town character of our town. Please remember, especially new city council members, our downtown character, it's a jewel of a town. It's very special. And just imagine it being a food court. Imagine it being Pier. Just imagine it. It will happen. It is already happening. My tenants here, 900 Club, people on 12th Street here, Esperanza, without even the second floor. So you put second floor dining in, it's going to ruin the town. There'll be noise everywhere. So your intensification has to be considered. I live on a walk street. I have difficulty pulling out of my alley onto Manhattan Avenue because now there's more parking because of the situation with parking lot 3. I think I'm going to run over a bike. If you narrow the streets, 2 emergency vehicles side to side. I was there when Elsinboro went up in flames. It was across the street from my home. Downtown almost burned down if they hadn't hit all those fires. Thank you, fire department, if they're here. So we need to underground. There's going to be accidents happening. Nobody's considering bikes. We used to talk about bike lanes. It's not even being discussed. It's just being discussed as more food and more drinking. There's trash, dirty sidewalks. Alleyways have leaking garbage cans flowing down the alley. There is vermin. There's still wretches and roaches around. It's still going on downtown. So we're going to need to spend more on city services. We're going to need better trash. We're going to need more pickups. More pickups mean more. I waited 15 minutes today for ice to be delivered to Arthur J. I waited patiently because I know it's not the guy's problem. I couldn't get into my garage for 15 minutes. It happens all the time on our little streets. So, and again, only one downtown member was part of our walk streets, a part of the task force. No one, and I have to say all the good work that these ladies did and the task force did, no one came to us and said, let's sit down with you and have a conversation about how it impacts downtown residents, because it's going to impact us more than anybody. We did not have a sit-down meeting with them to really discuss the issues. I had a Zoom call with Jay Lee because I wanted to show them how the impact of outdoor dining would be on my encroachments, would be literally in my house. So again, I think you need to really rethink, and $20 million is not a good use of our money. Put in a pool, do underground dining, do outdoor dining. Sorry, do a pool,
Okay.
don't do outdoor dining.
Underground dining.
Get your new parking lot made, underground your electricity. Do the things that help the safety and health of our town.
Thank you.
And I think we'd be all better off for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hello, Carol.
Hi, thank you, Carol Parent. Good evening, Mayor and council people. I asked for more time, but I don't think I'll need it because everybody, what they've said is in my notes, and I was going to simply, I don't need to repeat it. But I do think that we all need to get out of the weeds of this proposal and put this in a bigger perspective. You know, as it was just said, there are 27 restaurants just in downtown that have either open air or outdoor dining now, you know, within their footprint, 27. So are we a solution looking for a problem? Right now, when you walk downtown, if it's a nice day, it's very crowded. The restaurants, unfortunately, I can't cook, so I eat out every night. Hard to get a reservation. The restaurants are packed. Not a problem. There are, as was said, more residences downtown, more parcels, residential parcels than commercial parcels, and many of those are multifamily. So when you're thinking about this, you have to think about how alcohol in the tables outside in every restaurant. And we all know you can say you have to order food, but we were all 25 at one time, and you can order an appetizer and drink as many drinks as you want, okay? So think of our town, our beautiful town, when you walk through with all the sidewalks filled with tables, people drinking, noise coming out, and you have residences, you know, right there too. It's really sort of untenable. And you asked a good question, Mayor Haworth. You said, what about, you know, anything we build now? Because it's true. Right now, there's going to be a real problem with labor and construction materials. Huge problem. We're going to be competing and the costs are going to skyrocket. We then have the issue of the tariffs. We already know there's 25% on aluminum, steel. Possibly, yesterday there was 50, it's down to 25 today. And we have to really think about what this does not only to the cost, which is, to me, was a no-brainer or a non-starter once I saw the number, but in addition to that, what it does to the timeline. How long are we going to have downtown under construction? How many of our businesses, our smaller businesses, the shops I like to shop in, are going to go out of business because it's not going to be 14 to 16 months when you don't have, you know, the labor and the materials when you need. I know, I just built a house. So it doesn't work that way. And when you think about it, yes, you were right that it does, everything we build is going to have that restraint. So that's why we really have to be smart and prioritize. I mean, I know we have to build the parking lot 3. We're doing it, and that's great. Some people want the big pool. That's something that serves the community. We have the Jocelyn Community Center. That also serves the residents as a priority. And as you know, I put in my letter about undergrounding. And the reason that that's important to me is because I have so many friends who lived on the ocean in Malibu and in the Pacific Palisades. And now it's been documented that the reason that those all burned down was because of was exacerbated by the overhead power lines. So the fact that we're by the ocean doesn't protect us. And the bottom line is you can't spend the same dollar twice. So what's a necessity? What's more important? And I just want to say one other thing, because I understand what you said, Mayor Haworth, also about what we've done to all this trouble. And so what are we going to get out of it? But that's the good thing about this. You've all done your due diligence. You've overdone it, but you've done it. And what are you going to get out of it? You dodged a bullet. What can be better than that? And finally, I'll just say, we have the most beautiful town in the world. Let's not mess it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. It's good to see you looking so well.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mia Johansson, and I'm a downtown resident of Manhattan Beach. I'm here today because I am very against the very expensive plan to increase outdoor dining. The proposal isn't just costly, it's unfair. It primarily benefits a small group of restaurant owners while negatively impacting the quality of life for residents who fund it. Public construction projects rarely end on time or within budget, especially now with the rising costs and delays following the recent Palisades fire. Not to mention, Manhattan Beach is not immune to the devastation experienced by the Palisades, and it is reckless to commit our limited resources to non-essential projects like wider sidewalks and extra dining tables. Instead, that money should be used on practical measures to protect our community, like putting power lines underground to reduce fire risk and developing more robust evacuation and safety plans. I frankly don't understand how increasing fire safety in Manhattan Beach has not been top of mind, and instead the focus has been on beautification projects. Manhattan Beach is already beautiful. Beyond the financial irresponsibility of this plan, I want to reiterate that this is not a benefit to the public interest, and this plan negatively affects our community's quality of life. I am unconvinced that these flex spaces, or imaginary parking spaces that I still don't understand because the mock-ups already exist as parking spots, would come close to making up for the effects of severe congestion, parking shortages, garbage buildup, rodents, and traffic hazards that would worsen dramatically with this expansion. Also, 2 of the parking strategies listed said relocate demand for long-term parking, but people who need long-term parking are residents. So how does that make sense? It seems like they're saying that residents would park farther away so that restaurant goers could park closer. In what world is that a benefit to the public whose tax dollars would be going to fund this? I urge you to prioritize public safety, common sense, and the well-being of our entire community rather than cater to the financial interest of a select few. I please ask you to reject this proposal and stand with the residents of Manhattan Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, Council. My name is Nicholas. The surf is really good, or it was, so I just want to say the fact that I'm here says a lot. As a reminder, I work in construction, so I know firsthand experience as to construction projects getting delayed and going over budget. I guarantee you there's going to be tons of buried utilities, storm drains, sewer drains, etc., that are not going to be foreseen, and therefore there's going to be additional change orders and delays to the project. First of all, 2 years of construction, that's crazy. That's 2 years that the downtown is not going to be the same. Everyone's going to get impacted, including the people who are coming here to visit, and they're going to be turned off that there's construction, and they're not going to want to come back. $13 million plus another $8 million, throw out another 50% due to underground utilities not foreseen. I wanted to ask, was a survey done? I want to say we should be going door to door, knocking and asking, hey, would you be willing to pay $13, $18, $20 million to widen the sidewalks? Dining alone, just widen the sidewalks. And I guarantee you that's going to be a no. I think we should squash this and move on to bigger and better issues, such as Mia pointed out, burying the utilities to the underground. I think this proposal is simply demoing concrete and then repouring concrete, which is also kind of ridiculous. Question I wanted to ask is, how does this benefit the downtown residents? In my opinion, it does not. I've never heard one person complain about widening the sidewalks. I took a photo of the photo up there that was showing that there was going to be 5 to 10 feet of egress in between the outdoor dining to the end of the sidewalk. Right now, if safety is a concern, and that's why we're doing it, why don't we just get rid of the dining there right now, and I guarantee you we'll have 5 to 10 feet that's already there. That's $0 cost to everybody. We would be saving a lot of money. There's also regulatory concerns that seem to be overlooked, but we kind of touched on them a little bit. Additional restrooms, I think, is something that should really be considered. I have ulcerative colitis, so I can sympathize with the people who need to use the restroom. And if there's additional occupants who are waiting for it, and some of them cannot hold it, it's going to be very uncomfortable for them. The health department, increased personnel means increased kitchen space. Additionally, fire marshal, have we talked to them? Have we asked them about additional egress? Is there going to be concerns? There's a lot of other homework that needs to be done before even going into this. But simply going back to the fact, widening the sidewalks, spending probably $20 million or more, taking 2 years of construction time for the downtown area, it just doesn't make sense. And if it does, let's go survey people and make sure, because I'm hesitant that they're going to be agreeing with this. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your consideration. And thanks for everybody for coming out here today and putting everything together.
Thank you. Okay. More public comments? We won't forget your mother. We'll make sure she gets it on Zoom.
That's good. That's good. Hi, George Kaufman, a 36-year resident of the 100 block of 10th Street and over 40-year resident of Manhattan Beach. I was among the multitude that was not interviewed in connection with the task force. I'm against the proposal. This proposal is a bad vestige of the COVID era. Let's not spend any of us any more time and effort on this doomed project. During the height of COVID, people were convinced that there were no hugging would end. Handshakes were no more handshakes. These predictions have turned out to be exaggerated, and it's true here. COVID-era premise that people are obsessed with infinite outdoor dining. To underline the fact that this proposal is a solution in search of a problem, right now, has been pointed out, we have more than 24 restaurants downtown with outdoor dining. With all due respect, this is simply a proposed taxpayer-paid expansion of restaurant seating capacity. On Lower Manhattan Beach Boulevard, there are a handful of restaurants that would gain a street-side ocean view or an expanded ocean view. But neither of these justifies a costly and radical alteration and giveaway of the downtown as proposed here. Unfortunately, while the downtown is primarily a residential neighborhood, on the 15-member outdoor dining task force with at least 6 members with strictly commercial interests, there is only one representative of the downtown residents. This is how we end up with some of the following. A proposal containing really more like, sounds like $21 to $24 million expenditure when you include the matching other side of the street. $21 to $24 million expenditure per the very rough estimate that's been provided, with a plan to collect sales taxes and under-market rents into the future, which will never repay this amount. The math just doesn't math. This is not a proper use of taxpayer money. This is the wrong proposal at the wrong time. This proposal has an odd sawtooth pattern of randomly narrowed streets contiguous with wider streets, randomly narrowed sidewalks with wider sidewalks. Aesthetically, I can't imagine it. This proposal, according to the task force's own consultant, requires 181 additional parking spaces, yet they proclaim that they've only lost 7 spaces. Again, the math does not math. Proposal to allow second-floor dining 15 feet from residences is part of this proposal. Proposal to override current law prohibiting commercial use of walk streets. Proposal to allow outdoor music, including live music, for so-called special events, which, as we all know, means that they're going to do whatever they want. They're going to have music for 13 hours daily in proximity to residences. It's unacceptable. A proposal to establish parklets. I've got another less than a minute.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. A proposal to establish parklets, flex spaces, including 4 on our Walk Street block for people to enjoy takeout food, gather, loiter, and hopefully behave like Emily Post would approve. They include a willful dismissal of critical comments received by the task force, including at purported community workshops. Those have not made it into this presentation. A proposal to allow commercial loading in residential areas at the absurd hour of 4 a.m. Now, they're saying now that they're revising that, but can you imagine sitting down and putting pen to paper and saying that somebody can pick up in a residential area at 4 a.m., just even putting that in a presentation to this council? And finally, this is a costly and unneeded proposal to benefit restaurants at taxpayer expense, which will alter our much-valued small-town character, increasing litter, crowding, noise, vermin, and traffic. So I'm against it.
Thank you, George.
Otherwise, it's great.
Otherwise, yeah, it's great. Otherwise, how'd you like the play? All right, are there any other public comments in chamber? Okay. We will go to Zoom comments.
Kyle Ransford, a couple quick comments. I don't know that I appreciated when I was overviewing this on my phone, the so-called red location limitations to this proposal. So there's a couple things that I'd like to suggest about that. Asking the question of ADA requirements, specifically landings and equivalent access, especially on the slope parcels. We've experienced lawsuits on that on the Ocean View Cafe site, in which the city was named and the pieces there. So making sure that we're ADA and compliant in this. Actually, I started the wrong way. You know what I wanted to say to start? Let me go back to that. It's easy to complain. It's hard to have leadership and vision. And there's a lot of people, residents, that do want to see some opportunities to eat outside. And I think we can't have that lost on us. But we've got to find a proposal that, fits down the middle. And so that's where I've got a couple of these pieces that I would suggest you consider. I'm also concerned a little bit with the proposal and the sort of spot zoning that gets created, as Pro Tem Lesser mentioned. I was around, and some of you were also, when the chamber was full of people very upset that banks and real estate companies were going to take over downtown and it would never be the same ever again. And we let economic forces kind of move their way through, and we don't have those issues today. I get concerned when we're going to do things that are going to limit what can happen in the future and where economics aren't going to prevail. So when we give these very specific zones with no future flexibility to it and other parcels that can't then compete, it makes it very difficult to open a restaurant next to a restaurant that has outdoor dining. If I have to spend amount of money for a kitchen, et cetera, to do that. Second floor dining becomes very difficult because I have to park second floor dining. That's very expensive and hard to figure out. It's very then difficult to compete with these pieces. So making sure that our final pieces have a little bit more flexibility in those regards as we think of what can happen in the future. And there are ways and solutions to that I won't get into suggestions here today, but I would say considering that. The other piece is, I'm not sure that I'm hearing from the architecture design community, if you were in a master planning class and someone said, come master plan a beautiful downtown, kind of the incongruent nature of what's proposed. We're going to change some sidewalks and widen them for a minute and then not, as well as sort of the blue tile problem of this is going to look one way and the other is going to look the other way. So those are the three areas that I would suggest you can consider on your journey.
Thank you. Mr. Zislis.
Michael Zislis, downtown business owner, Manhattan Beach resident. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I just want to clarify one statement that was made today. Two things. One is the 1.25% sales tax increase quarter over quarter, 23-24. I want you all to remember that inflation for restaurants and businesses was about 24%. The reason I'm bringing that to your attention, we actually all went down in business. Just so you know, it was a tough year. The other thing is the unloading, that 4 a.m. to 11 a.m. or whatever I saw on the chart. Loading should be the same as construction hours, in my opinion. Who wants to be woken up at 4 in the morning with a truck in their yard? So 7:30 to 6 is our building time. Should be the same. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other public comments in chambers? Okay, so I'm going to close public comment in chambers. Don't worry. I did that just to see you get all nervous. Madam Assistant City Clerk, do we have comments on Zoom?
Yes, Kathleen Smith.
Okay, is that Mom?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to really be sure. Okay, great. Okay.
I'm here.
Yay. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I have listened quite carefully to everything that was said, and I have revised my comments to try not to repeat what other people have said. I've been a resident of Manhattan Beach for 51 years, 36 of which have been on the 10th Street Walk Street downtown between Ocean and Manhattan Avenue. I wasn't interviewed by the task force, and I think the task force would have benefited from having more downtown residents because we've experienced the changes and issues that came up over years. We've also had the constant experience of life downtown and the benefits and limitations of its structure. We don't need this intensification of commercial use, particularly dining, as we have physical limitations that make it very, very difficult to add parking, trash enclosures, secure bike enclosures, and other ideas that were incorporated into the recommendations. We also know from experience that detrimental factors come into play from intensified use. We had a period of time where we had really a problem with people drinking and making problems downtown. And it was really hard to recover from that. And a lot of people actually moved away because of it. We've got a recommendation that we have music all day long. We have recommendations that make no sense for the proximity of residences to the businesses. And I don't even think some of the businesses want it, but if you allow it, it will happen. We had a lovely dinner at a downtown Manhattan Avenue restaurant, expensive dinner, during COVID, when we had the little outdoor dining. And it was ruined by the noise from the music across the street. You need to really, really look at everything so closely. And I know that this task force tried to do it, but they ignored us, the people with experience, to tell them that this doesn't work. You just can't say it will work out. It doesn't. So you really need to look at the cost of this, the detriments of this, and listen to all of us who live down here, who love this town, who've lived here forever, and say, we don't need this. It's too expensive. It is not fair to impose these costs on the people who live here for benefits to restaurants that don't extend to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Are there other comments on Zoom?
No additional requests on Zoom.
Okay, so I'm going to close public comment and put my glasses back on so I can look at my notes. All right. Well, we have a lot to discuss, a lot before us, and I'm going to try to frame it up a little bit here. You know, I appreciate the residents who live downtown and their frustration that they felt that their opinions weren't heard or taken into account. And I appreciate you being here tonight and sharing them with us. You know, I want to assure you that we do take you very seriously, and I know that many members of the council have spoken with you, whether it was past council, current council, so your concerns are heard. And I think there's a lot of things that we should consider when making this decision. We also know that there's so many people who have said, oh, we love outdoor dining. And I can assure you that every single one of us up here has eaten outdoors, whether it was during COVID or, now. So it's not a referendum on that. I think we have to take into the economic pressures on restaurants that's continuing, but also, as one of the speakers said, let's maintain flexibility in our zoning. And, right now, restaurants are key to our vitality, but it may not always be that way. And we don't want to lock ourselves into some sort of, plan that it's not going to continue. So, and we do have to consider the cost and all of that. So I see, I'll save my specific thoughts for later, but I see Councilwoman Tarnay.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the time that the task force has put into this and staff has put into this. And I just want to be reminded that, it was at our direction, at council's direction, at our residents' direction that we asked staff and the task force to come together and find a solution, and to remind everybody that this came out of kind of a different set of circumstances of where we find ourselves now. So the world has evolved and we've all evolved along the way. So maybe the purpose of the task force initially, we're not looking at those same purposes, those same issues. So I'm seeing market forces have changed along the way. The restaurants have adjusted and they have built patio spaces within their own space that really meet some of the needs of and wants of residents who want that outdoor dining. So I see that as a great evolution of our spaces. And what I'm really appreciating about this process is it is collaborative. It is great to hear from our residents, whether you support it or oppose it. And that it's been a really respectful conversation that everyone does understand the work that staff has put into this, that the task force has put into this, and all of you with your thoughtful emails and comments and conversations that we've had. So as I'm trying to figure my way through this, as all of us are, I'm keeping those things in mind, that we are evolving. Our wants and needs are different. And I do have economic concerns as well. It's going to be a very costly undertaking, and whether at this point in history or in our city, we want to undertake those expenses with Parking Lot 3 and some other big capital improvement projects. So those are considerations I'm taking into account, and then also making sure that all the businesses feel like they're a part of whatever we decide to do, that that they're part of the conversation as well. So I just wanted to express my thanks, and then with the guidance of our great mayor here, we can figure out our way through this process. So thank you, everyone.
I appreciate your confidence. I'm not sure. Okay, Councilmember Lesser.
I want to start by thanking the Outdoor Dining Task Force. As been previously stated by Councilmember Tarnay and others, the task force followed the direction of council. Council, responding to the community, wanted to explore the feasibility of outdoor dining. This is not new. I've had the privilege of serving in one capacity or another in this community for over 21 years, and this has been a recurrent desire of many. How can we increase outdoor dining with the limitations that we have in our infrastructure? So we explored it. I share the concerns of many residents who've spoken here today about the feasibility of being able to move forward with the vision. It is a wonderful vision. It just is, there's too many challenges to implement it in our community. Let me start with the fact that I love outdoor dining. We all do, particularly during COVID with my dogs, my family, we were able to eat outdoors, and we wanted to continue that here if it was feasible. But if anything has come out of this, we've learned, one, the cost of the perverted vision is prohibitive given our other community needs. There are winners and losers in terms of which properties would get the improvement, which would not, complicating factors as to what to do in the future with changing needs and the marketplace, how we want a mixed use in our small downtown, and by the way, we haven't really talked about it, but our north end of Manhattan Beach, which would also be captured by this proposal. We'd be cementing property uses when we want this mixed use. It's part of the charm of our small town, and it allows for the marketplace to control highest and best uses. We have limited city resources. We have a commitment, first and foremost, to ensure there's adequate parking downtown, and that involves a focus on replacing our parking lot 3. We have other existing buildings that need attention, our infrastructure, that was the basis of the recent sales tax measure that passed, as well as proposals for new public structures, such as our Scout House. How can we pay for all of these things that we want? It would be very difficult to proceed with the vision with the idea of public funding. There's also only so much staff time to be able to undertake all of these endeavors. I love the character of our small town. I'm worried about its intensification. It's another reason why I approach this with some hesitation. So I'd say also that it has been mentioned in passing, there are opportunities currently for restaurants to improve their private property such that they allow more outdoor dining on premises. I think we want to encourage that, and I think it already is happening naturally. So where would I go from here? Let's try and move this discussion forward. I am in support of allowing staff to look at the first step towards implementing all of the work of this outdoor dining task force with regard to some of the recommendations for codifying rules and regulations with regard to outdoor dining currently. What can we do? What more limitations should we have? What can we do to protect some of the downtown residents in terms of hours of limitations going forward with future entitlement? How can we allow for greater consistency? So I'd be in favor of that. And then we still need to talk about the Walk Street on 10th Street. I'm open. I'm open to some nominal flex usages of that space, but clearly want to be conscientious of the residences that are proximate to that Walk Street. So with that, I'll stop.
Okay, great. And I know we have Councilmember Franklin and Shirley will want to speak as well. And then I think we will look at some of the independent recommendations. Take it away, Joe.
Great, thank you.
I mean, Councilmember Franklin.
Thank you. Amy,
Oh, my gosh.
Mayor Howard. So, like many people here, I was attracted to Manhattan Beach when I first saw it. It's quaint, it's cute, it's knowledgeable and caring, business owners, restaurants. It's where I chose to raise my family, where I hope when we're gone, I love the passing it down of generations, and hope that my family will stay here and enjoy it. And as such, it's such a balance to, what did we fall in love with? We owe a lot to the generations before us that came when we came here, because they made the city that way. But then again, the world changes and the texture of the city changes. But there are some things that we can control, the things that make Manhattan Beach special. There's nothing I enjoy more than telling people I live in Manhattan Beach, and that's where I choose to live. And it's not gloating over them or whatever, but it's pride. It's pride that people care so much about their home. It's pride that they care about the schools, the businesses, the beach, keeping it clean, enjoying it. Everything is right here. So, and this is a big special part of it. You saw the questions I was asking. COVID was an aberration. I mean, let's face it, those numbers that we posted during COVID are inflated. It was a unique situation. People were at home. They were bored. They went out to eat when they could. They went out to eat as much as, whenever they could. And at the time, the only dining that was available was outside. And who wouldn't love that? Except on a night like tonight. But we got to be with our friends. We got to be with our family. We chose not to wear masks if we didn't want to. I mean, it was a release. I mean, COVID, invaded our psyche. It really did. And restaurants provided that relief, and that's where we fell. I believe that we fell in love with outdoor dining because of that and what it presented. And there was a thought, let's carry it forward. But realistically, as I said many times, we're just not built like these other cities, even as close as Redondo Beach in the Hollywood Riviera, where they got outdoor dining, Hermosa Beach, where they got the Pier Plaza. You go around the country, New York, Washington, Chicago, they have wonderful dining, out on the sidewalk. But we're just not prepared for that without major infrastructure changes. And infrastructure changes, I don't see a margin for error. And I just believe that there could be some big errors, if we proceeded with this project as is. The one item about undergrounding, you are free to go ahead and start planning undergrounding in your neighborhoods. We have a very robust undergrounding program. You can come into City Hall and our planning department will explain it to you, and you get it, get the vote of your neighbors, and you can go ahead and start that process. I think you should, for the same reasons that you indicated. It tends to be safe, and if it's a concern, go ahead and start that process. But somebody wrote in, one of your neighbors and a developer, went through some history that I'm quite familiar with, like Westwood. Westwood was a robust, thriving neighborhood, of restaurants, and it just kept growing, more restaurants, one right after the other, to the detriment of retail. And ultimately, what happened to Westwood? It just faded away, and we don't want that to happen to Manhattan Beach. In fact, one question I forgot to ask was the ratio now of restaurants to retail. I think it's pretty close, 50-50, 50, 60, 60, 40.
We don't have, I don't want to answer because we don't have an exact number
Sure,
for you.
yeah. But we have retailers, it breaks my heart when they go out of business, like Beehive and the like. And also restaurants, when you see something, a place like Lemonade go out of business. So we want to maintain that vitality. We want to be good at what we're good at. And that's what we're good at, the small town, the small town feel. I, too, went through and did an inventory of the number of restaurants that are hybrid outdoor, we can call it. Hook and Plow, Bruco. We've got Zinc, the hotel in Metlocks, all of Metlocks. Nick's has outdoor dining, Petros. Esperanza is adding to their outdoor dining. Pete's and Noah's, right? We heard some things about having coffee with your friends. You can do that and be outdoors with those coffee places. Bluestone took over Coffee Bean. They have a patio. Hennessy's. The Kettle. Horse and Plow. Tacolicious even, if somebody wants to go in there like that. Rock and Fish. And then we're seeing right before our eyes what I think is the model, and that's Great White taking over the Pitfire location, right? They're cutting off the snub of that nose that faces Manhattan Beach Boulevard. They had 30 outdoor dining seats before this renovation, and now they're going to have 70. So they're going to be able to offer their diners a good experience, outdoors or indoors. And what's important, and I'm going to read this verbatim from another letter, is restaurants having the financial benefit should bear the costs of outdoor dining, same as any other business. And that's essentially where the fairness comes, right? Is if you can do it and it's allowable, go ahead and do it. we, of course, are interested in helping as much as we can. This is why we tasked the task force with looking into this information to see what, this project, to see what can be done. And we're going to learn and salvage a lot of what we learned from this experience. It's going to be very valuable as we go along. So I also, second Mayor Pro Tem Lesser, and and we can add more as we go along.
We can add more. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
All right, I know that Councilmember Shrillian, who is on Zoom, has comments, and I'll add some and try to narrow us and get us moving forward there. Councilmember Shrillian, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and Madam Mayor. It's late here in DC. First, I wanted to thank all the public comments and from the residents and businesses. Appreciate your patience going through this long process. I too am very fond of our small town atmosphere. I think we have a brilliant ecosystem that's worked well for us in the downtown over the last 30 years. And adding almost 600 seats, which again, I reiterate, that's almost 9 to 10 new, up to 9 to 10 new restaurants. It's almost a third more, 30% more capacity than we currently have in restaurant. I think that would just disrupt the balance. I'm all for the flex areas, as you know, they need to be vetted, but I'm also would like a plan for the flex areas, not to just put them all in here and there, and for it to take many years. If we can come up with a milestones and timeline to get those things done. And I'm also for maybe looking a little further into more analytics about the flat areas of the projects that were recommended, maybe on Manhattan Avenue or the 300 block of Manhattan Beach Boulevard. But adding nearly 600 seats, I just think would disrupt our beautiful downtown. And I also have concerns about the fiscal part. And I don't want to get too deep into the analysis of the fiscal item, but we do have a lot of things to do, as my colleagues indicated. And this, I don't think, would benefit everyone in town. When we did the new sales tax measure, we learned that over 60% of the sales tax comes from outside of the city. So although people, jotted down things that on the survey that they really want outdoor dining, I think times has changed. It's almost 5-year anniversary to when COVID started in 2020 March. So I think we need to change with it. Thank you.
All right, I really appreciate all of my colleagues' comments, and I don't disagree with anything that's been said. Let's see, how do I bring it all around? I think I'd like to talk about some of the task force recommendations that don't include this big project. But before I do, I'm not against eventual downtown beautification. I'm not against widening of some streets. I'm not against flex spaces. But I think when we talk about, but that doesn't necessarily mean widening sidewalks means an outdoor dining program, right? The more and more that this has been presented to us, I have become very suspicious of the public property being used for the private good. I think that's really a problem. And I do think that we've learned a lot over the past couple of years. I mean, this task force was started by a prior council. I applaud the prior council before that who responded during COVID with the outdoor dining decks, and staff, by the way. Staff made that happen. And it was, you responded like that, and you probably saved our restaurateurs, right? And the restaurateurs, in turn, saved us, as somebody said. COVID invaded our psyche, right? It was so great. And so many of the restaurateurs then supported the the doctors working in emergency rooms and the first responders with meals. I mean, the community came together. And so I think Councilwoman Tornay is the one who mentioned that, gosh, when we came out of that, yeah, we all had so much fondness for what that was. It's true, but that was a moment in time. And things, do change. And what changes is how we interact with our space, market forces change, and our needs change. I mean, we have this, when I was looking at the parking recommendation, I was thinking, even if everybody up here wanted to do outdoor dining, right? We couldn't begin to talk about parking recommendations because we have no idea what we're going to do with Lot 3 yet. Are we just going to rebuild it? Are we going to go underground and add a couple more layers or levels? What are we going to do? So, things have changed. Our needs have changed. And, as I said, I'm not opposed to downtown beautification. I'm not opposed to some flex spaces. I'm not opposed to widening sidewalks in some places. But all of that should be looked at in terms of the CIP process, which we're going to begin soon. And we do have to prioritize. I don't know if it's you, Nina, or maybe Carol, talking about prioritizing. Would we prioritize $13 million for this over putting money into the senior scout house? Would we prioritize this over a new parking lot, this over the pool? So I don't think any of us would. I think I can say that. So, and the costs are going to go up dramatically. The labor costs, because there's going to be such demand for labor, and we really have no idea what the goods are going to cost. Today it could be 25%, tomorrow it could be 75%. Who knows? So I think the time was well spent, though. There's so much information from this that we can use, whether it's parking studies, traffic studies, all of these plans and designs. I don't think we should toss, because again, if we want to do some flex space, if we want to do, yeah. So I do want to start looking, though, at some of the things. I think, we do need to look at the 10th Street. I think they need an answer on that. And there's some recommendations. I hold up the slideshow that we can talk about. So again, thank you for everyone for participating, but we do have to be smart and not box ourselves in to some cement paths that in a few years are going to, we're going to trip over them. Councilwoman Tornay?
Thank you. I think, as we're looking kind of backwards to see where we ended up here, how we got here, I also want to make sure that we're looking forward in this process as well, so that if we want, I think all of us on here would agree that we want the character of our town to stay the same. And there are going to be events that are going to be happening in the greater LA area that we should plan for. So I would like to see kind of some of the recommendations, some of the information that's been gathered from this process. I think what it looks like to me is like, a pivot away from outdoor dining, but really looking at the wholeness of our downtown area and how we're going to be able to accommodate the influx of tourists, how we can maximize the dollars for our businesses around town, but also still really maintaining the character. So, whatever we decide to do today, I think I would still like to see those considerations, maybe the widening of sidewalks still, because I think some of these investments we can recuperate with the way that we can capture in tourist dollars on the other side of it. So be really thoughtful and forward-looking as well in this process. So that may be very well be a part of the CIP process. I hope you all stay engaged and will continue to give us your thoughts on this, but we really appreciate it, so thank you.
All right. So let me ask my colleagues how, and I'm looking right at you, Mayor Pro Tem Lesser, having been a member of the Planning Commission, but are there certain recommendations that you would like to move forward with? Do you want, or should I ask the city manager, how would you like us to proceed? Because I do think we're pivoting away from providing outdoor dining as the main focus.
I welcome hearing if staff has a recommendation of the direction that would be helpful council so that the Parking and Public Improvements Commission, as well as the Planning Commission, can begin their process to refine some of these proposals with public input.
Well, they put something up. Okay.
We can either start with the first direction needed or the second direction needed. It seems like the focus of discussion was more geared towards the second, so we can start here and then go back to the Walk Street.
Why don't we start with the Walk Street?
Let's start with the
Walk
No, let's start with the Walk Street. It's number one after all. Okay. Councilmember Franklin.
Oh, well, I was just going to move that, we adopt item number 1B, continue prohibiting commercial use of Walk Street, but pursue public flex space, improvements for the benefit of the general public.
Okay.
1B.
Well, Nina, it looks
I
like
second.
Nina was trying to second. Joe is, I know.
Oh, 'cause
we
we're
can
doing
still
a
have
vote.
discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, so Joe moved, Nina seconded, and I see discussion.
And for me, it's going to be the devil's in the details. That is to say, I want to have a process that includes the community in discussing what this entails. And I recognize that was staff's and the task force intention as well, but particularly for 10th Street, because it is close to residents, I think we need to make sure that this is a type of improvement to that public space that doesn't invite loitering, as was mentioned, and after-hours noise, but nonetheless can offer maybe some seating or some engagement for the public.
And I would say, oh, go ahead, City Manager. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to remind the council, this one does not require a code amendment. The code allows that as is, so we will take it through the process with PPIC to get feedback on the proposal.
Yeah. And what I think the intent was allow for flex space, whether it's public art, whether it's, seating or something like gardening or something.
And to remind residents that there'll still be another vote on that, so. Through PPIC, right?
Well, this does not require a code amendment. It's really just the direction needed from council to be able to incorporate a design that accommodates improvements in that area, but the code allows that today.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
We would like to see improvement. Yeah, no.
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to confirm. So we have a motion and a second. Staff would welcome that motion, correct? As there's a nodding head, so fine.
Let's call for the question. It will be.
Unless Councilmember Cerulean has anything to add.
It-
No, he's good. Thumbs up.
Okay, thumbs up. So we're going to do a oral or voice vote.
Councilmember Cerulean?
Yes.
Councilmember Tarnay?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Mayor Haworth?
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem Lesser?
Yup.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, all right. So now it was the number 2, future direction on long-term program development. So I'm not sure. I would just, I don't think we want to develop plans to build out the preferred vision of the task force because we're not correct. So that's not part of it. So no. I just dropped my pen. What a gentleman. So proceed with no sidewalk widening as an alternative. I don't want to vote that down. I mean, I don't want to, go ahead.
I was going to just confirm with staff what direction might be helpful to initiate code amendments, which is under 2B small 1. What direction would you like tonight so that you can begin this process of working with the commission?
Right now, we have a general idea of what types of operational standards we wanted to start codifying, but from the overall recommendations or the specific outdoor dining regulations that you saw on the slides, if you wanted to give an alternative direction, that's something we can also consider moving forward to.
So what we need is for the council to say, proceed with code amendments. But if there were any recommendations on the regulations from the task force that you did not agree with, this would be the time to tell us that was not something we are interested in.
Okay, so what I want to suggest is we suggest the page where they are and show us so we can go down there. But we've taken off develop plans to build out preferred vision. I want to take off identify parking strategies because we're going to be looking at that holistically. So,
Mean number 3?
well, yeah, I
or
mean,
I?
they're going to show us more specifically, but I was just restating from
Yeah.
the page that we're on. Okay, so,
May I ask, is
Yep.
there a slide that you think would be a good checklist? I'm
Well,
looking
she's-
at page 40, but is
40.
40 the one that you want us to look at?
I have 40 as well.
Yeah.
Unless there's any other comments you would like to make in terms of private property and public right-of-way program scope.
Okay.
I think we've
I
said
don't
it
want to
all.
be, no, see, this is too vague, and I don't feel like it's expressed for the residents, for the businesses, and for us. I would just say, like I think here's what has to happen. I would come back to us with the recommendations as they relate to operations and code amendments that don't provide for a new sidewalk program, right? Sidewalk dining program.
So
Yeah, okay,
take-
but,
Take
go
this
ahead.
out.
Go ahead, Councilmember Tarnay.
I would somehow like to preserve, I mean, I don't know how we move on this, but like preserve, just continuing to examine, kind of scaling back the project. We don't need sidewalks that are wide enough to accommodate outdoor dining, but perhaps, widening, just some of those, having had kids up, pushing the stroller up Manhattan Beach Boulevard,
Right.
it is very crowded. And I'm hoping that as a part of this process, or perhaps a new process, I'm not quite sure where this would fit in, but that we continue to look at ways to accommodate these changes, like the influx of tourists that are going to be coming and.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I agree, and that's why I didn't want to take sidewalk widening off the
Yeah,
table
yeah.
completely, but I would address it through a CIP process. I don't want to develop plans to, build out the preferred vision, right? So that, I'm on page 49. Let's go back to page 49 for a second. So, A, no. I mean, right, do I have agreement? A is a no. B
Right.
is different because the language says proceed with no sidewalk widening as alternative. And I'm saying preserve the ability to do that in a CIP at some point. I'm not saying go spend $3 million or $13 million this year to do that.
Well,
Yes?
so I think since we're not voting to widen the sidewalks, but we're looking at enhancing the existing sidewalk dining to provide some, relief or some services, that's what we need to do then. Does
I
that-
didn't
does that seem
understand.
right?
Can you,
Yes, I know where Councilmember Franklin is going. In order to preserve the type of sidewalk dining that we are experiencing today,
gotcha.
we do need to initiate code amendments, otherwise.
Yes.
The general essence of that will change in 2026 after the state lifts some of the temporary orders.
Yes, I agree. And I will go back to the page. I don't want to just say, yes, initiate the code amendments. I want to look at all those
Yeah,
code
sure.
amendments before we
Page
do
40.
it. Page 40, which we were, but I still want us to understand that on page 49, we're not identifying parking strategies. The only piece that I have a problem with is I don't want us to assume that we're never widening sidewalks. That's all.
I agree.
Okay, we agree? All right, so we have that. Okay, so now go back to 40. So, I guess the first bullet point doesn't matter, right? It's not really,
We did already receive direction from the council on that, but if the council wanted to change direction on that, that this would be the time, right? We will continue to focus the code amendments on
Sure.
eating and drinking establishments only.
okay. So,
Well, no. On the side.
yeah. Go ahead.
7 amendments.
The issue I'm weighing is really trying to appreciate limited staff time and trying to keep this focused, because to the extent that it broadens, it's going to be more of a challenge. I personally, however, would like to see how other retail spaces can make use of the outdoor space, but that might be a separate process.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Hi, sorry. I guess maybe a question for the city manager. I'm looking at page 49, and I'm looking at 2B. But is there a way that we can strike the no sidewalk widening as an alternative and just kind of give you a little bit broader scope to, look at the code amendments, incorporate the public, flex spaces in the CIP, and sub-bullet identify parking strategies, even though I know that's in another area. But can we just give you, let's do 2B?
Absolutely. That is the type of direction we are looking for. And given that it would be no sidewalk widening at this time, but potential initiation of the code amendments, the parking number will change, right? So then we can tailor the parking strategies to the new parking number.
You know what? But I still think it would be. Am I just tired? I would like us to come back, for you to come back. What?
I'm not going to answer that.
Well, as long as you don't say something mean. No. But I kind of feel like we're horse trading here without a lot of things written down, and it could get a little funky. I'm not sure the residents. I don't know if people watching will know what we're doing, and so I'm kind of thinking we should come back with what are these code amendments based on our discussion here tonight and approve them then.
We have to come back with the code amendments.
Look at me.
We cannot approve code amendments tonight.
Okay.
So the code amendments would essentially codify the recommendations of the task force as it relates to the operational requirements, the code enforcement action, the ability to serve alcohol as part of your sidewalk dining permit where the code doesn't allow that today. That has to go through a process. It would go to the PPIC, and the Planning Commission, and then ultimately the City Council. So there will be multiple opportunities for community feedback along the way before it even gets to council for adoption of the code amendments. I hope that answers the question.
It does, and thank you. I also want to add in there, I thought Mr. Zislis had a really good idea about for vehicle loading, making the same hours as construction hours.
So the vehicle loading provisions that we discussed, it's really based on staff doing outreach to the businesses in downtown and North Manhattan Beach, whether it's eating and drinking establishments or regular retailers. And basically it was all over the place in terms of where they received their deliveries, when they received their deliveries. It can be any time throughout the day and week. And the reason that it was set at 4 a.m. is because of the establishments that serve breakfast, which received deliveries really, really early.
The other thing we found in our research was that the mom and pop shops had less ability to control the time of their delivery than the bigger establishments did. So the task force also wanted to balance that issue to make sure that the restrictions were not too restrictive for the mom and pop establishments.
No, that makes sense. I just, Mr. Zislis does operate a business that serves breakfast. So, I hear you. I can absolutely see how a mom and pop shop can't, dictate to their, food delivery too much, but 4 to 6 is really brutal. So anyway, Councilmember Lesser.
I heard from staff a request to indicate any additional areas that council would like staff to explore to come back with. And I just wanted to make sure several issues that we've touched on are included in what staff studies.
Great. Thank you.
One, to the extent that we don't want to remove sidewalk widening, are there areas where we might want to explore sidewalk widening for safety purposes? Because that was one of the justifications for this program. Obviously, it's not like the city is currently ignoring unsafe conditions. It's that we might need to be funding certain opportunities for widening sidewalks in certain areas from a safety standpoint. Second, I've heard a reference to noise from second-story restaurant purposes. My recollection is these are hours that are set usually through a planning commission process, and commissioners often look at, with staff recommendations, hours of proximate restaurants. But there had been some recent entitlements where some in the community felt that there was an additional entitlement granted beyond what typical hours were. So as a result, I know I would be interested in having staff report back on whether some additional guidelines can be set beyond the specific entitlement process for individual applicants. Is that clear? At least what I'm looking for in terms of what staff would come back with, and I have one more.
I think so, and I think we would work through that with the Planning Commission, particularly as it is a land use matter.
Yep.
And so for second floor, I think you had a slide that discussed the permitting process. Can you go back to that? So I definitely see where you're going, Mayor Pro Tem Lesser, and we will discuss that with the Planning Commission. And I say that because the task force did look to see how the process could be streamlined, right? And so part of what the recommendation was for the second floor was to utilize an administrative ministerial process that would be streamlined. And this slide says including alcohol, so I am going to turn to Jahi to confirm. Is it intentional for second floor to include alcohol as well, or did that have to go to a use permit process?
No, everything would be ministerial, including alcohol service. And the reason that we wanted to allow that ministerial streamlined process for second floor outdoor dining decks is it's a very strenuous and costly process because you need to bring everything up to code in terms of ADA, building, fire, which is a lot more costly and a heavier lift that you have to do compared to other unenclosed areas on your ground floor, for instance.
So if my goal is to propose some limits as a protective measure for downtown, wouldn't we want to establish some guidelines, particularly if there's a suggestion of having this be approved administrative? This is subject to council consensus, but I just wanted to be clear. I'm not looking for expediting, I'm looking for guidelines that would limit it, particularly as we entitle specific applications going forward. Wanted to also tie the loop, if I could, on deliveries. Did I hear that there are inconsistent standards, or is it just a matter of enforcement of the standards that are on the books?
Right now, for vehicle loading, we don't really have geographically specific standards in place.
So I would like for staff to come back to see what our options might be if we wanted to set some standards, particularly given the proximity of residences to our downtown.
And did I hear you kind of hint at it could be different based on geographic?
Yeah.
So that if an alley is shared by residential, they might have different hours? Could you do-
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
that's
If we
what I'm
have
hearing.
restaurants, they're going to need deliveries. But
Right.
obviously, we need to be mindful of the uses that have grown up around these commercial usages. So I welcome staff providing some options for some guidance.
And that will help with enforcement, because there seems to be a lot of confusion.
Right.
Or
There's
some
no
confusion.
rule to enforce right now,
Right.
which is
That's what I
the
mean.
issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I was going.
So can I just confirm,
Oh, please.
in terms of the guidelines, additional guidelines for second floor, which the task force did start working on those in terms of the noise attenuating requirements, and also the vehicle loading standards. Should we just deal with that through the process with the PBIC and the Planning Commission and ultimately get back to council? Or did the council want to see
that
that in
okay?
advance?
That's interesting.
Yeah, because I'm worried. Well,
I'm receptive. I want to hear from my colleagues. I don't want to dominate it.
go ahead. She was saying how the loading, recommendations could go to PPIC and planning and then to us. But I think we want to give direction on it because I think we're.
The reason I'm hesitating is because is staff already working on these initiatives and see a pathway for bringing them forward to Planning Commission and the PPIC as is, or do you see them as integrated, which the mayor, I think, is getting at? Are these part and parcel with the outdoor dining recommendations? I see them almost independent.
It's
As it
separately.
deals with the current.
I would like to bifurcate them. They're separate.
Yeah.
Because if we're not doing sidewalk dining, we still need vehicle loading.
Yep.
Right? So it's okay if it goes to PPIC and planning, but I want us to be the one directing where it's, what our goal is. And our goal is to really try to protect residents as much as possible who share an alley at the minimum. Yeah, Councilwoman Hernay.
Are there a lot of complaints or issues with deliveries right now in residential
Yes.
areas? Okay.
So we do have to go to PPIC and Planning Commission anyway,
Yeah.
because we are proposing amendments to Title VII and Title X, and respectively, those would go to both of the commissions. So unless there's a different title that has to be amended, and I'm looking to Eric for the vehicle loading, it would be Title VII? 14, Title 14.
I'd be in favor of letting this move forward, if only because
Yes.
it allows this to get implemented sooner, and it all comes
Yes.
back to council anyway.
As long as they understand.
And it allows for public input in that process.
As long as we're heard that this really needs to be fixed, and it can't be 4 AM.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That just,
It will be more streamlined, and we will stress that point to the respective commissions.
Are there any other issues that have come up that are not captured and memorialized here that may be missing? Because those are important issues, and I want to make sure that they do move forward.
I'm just straightening up this.
In terms of the live entertainment and amplified music, when we first presented this item last year, staff had an alternative recommendation from the task force in that we wanted to prohibit both activities in the sidewalk dining areas, but limit it to 2 times a year per the existing code that's in place.
okay. I mean, and I'd like to say, I don't want to ban it completely. I think that we have been very restrictive. Sorry, folks, but I do want to limit it somehow, so, or do we have, so the original, the staff's recommendation was different than the.
Yes.
So there's no ambient music, correct?
No.
So staff's recommendation is no ambient music, okay, I like that. And then you're saying live outdoor entertainment limited to twice a year?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what our
And
code allows today.
what our code allows
Yep.
today.
So essentially, we were saying follow what the code allows today.
Follow the code, I like that. Does any,
Fine, follow the code so long. And am I correct
Bueller?
to see that there are hours here, hours that limit, have a cap on live music at 10 p.m.? Is that correct?
It's 10 p.m.
Yes. Those hours will be applicable to both ambient and live entertainment.
I don't think we want live entertainment on the sidewalk at 9. Do we? I mean, maybe for the Skechers Friendship Walk, we might, like maybe people would be out there, because the Maricopa Drumline is out on the,
So here's a thought. What we have begun doing is giving specific
Yep.
instruction to go through the process. Is live music then something that should go through the process to revisit, even though it's already on the books?
we don't, if we keep the code as it is, we
Yes.
don't have to.
Title V.
That's correct, but if you tell us, take this forward to PPIC to consider, then we would bring forward a recommendation.
And consider would expand it or restrict it?
Consider the recommendation of the task force, which is what's in front of you.
No, we don't want that. You don't want ambient music. We just,
If you don't want ambient music, then we'll mark that as a no and we'll move forward.
that's good, right?
Yep.
Are we good?
No,
Okay.
yep.
Anything else? How clear are we? Okay.
Did you have any input regarding the sidewalk dining use fees being tiered? Right now, it's a consistent $3 per square foot.
I think we should explore
Sure.
potential increases.
Yeah,
And how to
for
get
sure.
there and what are ways that other jurisdictions charge for
Yep.
their outdoor space, we should review.
Yes.
Because I thought that fee was set during the pandemic,
This fee was set 10 years ago.
even before.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
And
it was in
and our
place.
consultant did recommend increase and a tiered approach.
Yeah, let's look
Okay,
at that.
let's look at that.
You guys good with that?
Yes.
Steve, thumbs up?
Good.
It's almost 12:30 in the morning for him. Good job, Steve. Okay.
Let's elongate this meeting even more.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, sorry, was I not supposed to say that? Sorry.
Okay. Anything
keep
else
going.
staff seeks direction on?
Unless the council found anything that stood out that should be reconsidered, I think we have the direction we needed to proceed.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I apologize because there's a lot of things to respond to here, right? And I wanted to be sure that whatever we were doing was clear, but it is going to come back to us.
Yes.
And, I think that we made it clear of certain things that we want to go into the CIP, but I think we've also made it clear that we're not expanding outdoor dining, but that the task force has brought, like bike parking is something we will have to address at some point. But again, I'll look at that with the parking program. So, anything else? Okay. I think we're done. I guess we don't talk about future agenda items at this meeting, correct? I have to bring those up at the next meeting? What was that? Okay, all right, so unless everybody wants to stay here a little longer, I am going to adjourn this meeting to a closed session Tuesday, March 18th at 5 p.m. right here in City Council chambers. We are adjourned.